Yes.
The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1275 of the War News stream. And we've gotten some massive news, like no exaggeration, very large news today that Lithuania has closed its airspace along the Belarusian border in preparation for the massive Zapad exercise. Also, we've seen that Putin has struck an American facility and destroyed it in Ukraine. And also, Russia is rapidly deploying troops to Kaliningrad today, and we have satellite evidence of those deployments. So, very big developments, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, as we have been able to hear significant developments from the surrounding areas of the Suwalki Gap that the president of the Republic of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, has stated that war is imminent between the allies of the Russian Federation and those of the NATO Defensive Alliance. We've also been able to hear that Oreshnik hypersonic missiles are now being forward deployed inside of Belarus, an extension of the lifting of the Russian moratorium on the deployment of ballistic and cruise missiles in the entirety of Eastern Russia and also throughout the entirety of Eastern Europe as a whole, while at the same time we have been able to hear that the Lithuanians are now closing their airspace as Russian military buildups are being seen inside of the Kaliningrad Oblast just weeks ahead of the prepared Zapad 2025 military exercises, which are already believed to be the largest military exercises in Zapad's military exercise history, with nearly 110,000 armed forces of the Russian Federation and the Republic of Belarus soon to be involved in the military exercise. We have been able to hear at the same amount of time that the Russian Federation has now attacked a U.S. industrial concern, and particularly a U.S. factory just to the east of the Ukrainian city of Uzhorod, directly along the Hungarian-Slovakian border, as we have been able to see that the factory took 5 direct hits from Kalibr cruise missiles overnight, and it appears that this has resulted in the complete collapse of U.S. efforts and attempts to try and find a peace agreement with the Russian Federation, with the President of the United States now rescinding the United States of America officially officially from any involvement in peace talks between the Russian Federation and the state of Ukraine, and publicly calling for the Ukrainian armed forces to go on the offensive against the Russian Federation and to, and I quote, bring the war to the Russians. We have also been able to hear at the exact same time that talks, generally even according to the Europeans, have entirely collapsed to this moment, as it does appear that the Russian Federation has no solid or true intention of actually following through with their statements where they said that they actually would meet the president of Ukraine in a face-to-face meeting between the president of Ukraine and the president of the Russian Federation. Outside of that, we have been able to hear that in last night's drone attack the Russian Federation conducted, Polish F-16s were scrambled once again to be able to defend their skies in case any drones were errant and flew into Polish airspace, while the Republic of Poland has actually filed a formal diplomatic protest to the Russian Federation about the Shahed 136 that exploded near to the small village of Olsztyn, just to the southwest of the city of Lublin. Outside of that, we have also been able to hear that the People's Republic of China now appears to be conducting preparations for a larger attempted amphibious landing exercise, with loads of dual-purpose civilian military ferries making their way to the Fujian province within the Chinese Eastern Theater Command, to either prepare for larger war games and military exercises that will be simulating an invasion of Taiwan, or for a possible invasion of Taiwan itself, which cannot be entirely ruled out. At the same time, Taiwan also had an issue today attempting to fire a Patriot PAC-2 missile from a Patriot PAC-3 launcher, with the missile suffering a critical failure and detonation only several thousand feet from the launcher itself after it was fired. We have also been able to see the U.S. satellite photography has unveiled a large North Korean ICBM silo complex within the northern area of the country, just 16 miles away from the Chinese border, heavily suggesting that most North Korean ICBMs are actually all coordinated and triangulated into a singular spot within the Democratic People's Republic of Korea that also have the range to be able to target and attack the United States of America and the lower 48 directly. We have also been able to hear that the Islamic Republic of Iran is now conducting major military exercises in the form of missile test launches and also anti-ship attack tests as well, near to the area of the Gulf of Oman, while the missile attacks or missile tests are being conducted within the area of western Iran. We have also been able to hear of explosions inside of Karachi in Pakistan, and the Israeli armed forces are continuing their airstrikes against Hezbollah forces within southern Lebanon. And there is loads of news beyond that as well, but those are just some of the bigger ticket items that we have today. Not speaking of every single little detail of news and information that we have had over the past 24 hours. Today is, by no exaggeration, a major news day, and it does appear that by every piece of news that we are getting out of Eastern Europe at the moment, the possibility of a larger war breaking out as a result of the war in Ukraine is becoming more and more of a certainty, at least at the moment. But moving on from that,
honestly, at this point, it seems like everything's taken a really sharp turn to the left just out of the blue. We knew it was going to get here. We didn't know how quick it was going to get here. It seems like it's gotten that way in less than 24 hours, which is a bit concerning.
It is incredibly concerning, to say the least. This is something that I have to say, folks, it's very rare to see this many developments on a single day, and to also have them all painting a fairly clear picture, but we will be making sure to get y'all into each and every bit of detail of the news that we have to be able to explain what's been happening today and what may be happening here within the next few weeks. Moving on into our major news, it's going to be taking us directly into the area of the Suwalki Gap, as we have been able to hear that the president of Belarus, or technically the Republic of Belarus by its official naming convention, Alexander Lukashenko, has stated that the citizens of Belarus need to prepare for war, because war is going to be imminent between Belarus and that of NATO forces. Belarus is also forming a brand new brigade to field Oreshnik hypersonic missiles with Iskanders within range of Ukraine and NATO, and we have also been able to hear, as an extension of this, that the Russian Federation is also deploying their own Oreshnik hypersonic missile forces into the Republic of Belarus, further moving these hypersonic missiles closer to range of eastern Germany and also other areas within the heartland of the European alliance that is inside of NATO. This is a fairly considerable development, and it is also one, generally by the statements from Alexander Lukashenko, that is letting us know that the Republic of Belarus is already starting to get closer to a warlike footing of its own, although situated as a nation and a military, at least in its own apparatus, that hardly could carry forward an actual major ground war, it does appear that they are already preparing to join the Russian Federation in an eventual conflict, considering that this statement today from Lukashenko came out in preparation of the Zapad 2025 military exercises. More importantly, it's not what's happening inside of Belarus that's giving us a clearer picture of what's going to be happening here within the next coming days and weeks. There's really more so what's happening directly across from Belarus, just about 50 miles away inside the Kaliningrad Oblast. We have been able to hear that the Russian Federation is deploying significant forces into the region, and there's apparently been a heavy buildup of Russian military infrastructure and Russian forces inside of Kaliningrad. Recently, we have heard that apparently over the past few days, the satellite picture is starting to generally unveil this information to us. It seems that this may have started to happen about 5 days to 7 days ago, but it appears that 2 new Russian brigades have been moved into Kaliningrad, which is adding about an additional 9,000 to 10,000 Russian personnel in the Russian armed forces to the available armed forces present inside of the Kaliningrad Oblast. This is something that is fairly significant, as this actually means that the number of Russian troops within the Oblast has increased by 20%, nearly an entire quarter, over just the past 5 to 7 days. Not only that, but it also seems that the Russians are starting to build even more and sophisticated bases and equipment, as we were able to see that over just the past several days, just about the past week, mind you all, the Russian Federation has started to rapidly build a new advanced radar complex to be able to detect threats from NATO and to also be able to coordinate Russian forces in some form of a counterattack or response in the air. We can actually see over the satellite footage here the evidence and buildup of this specific site and base. This, by the way, was taken over the course of years.
And also, they're building up, it appears to be a base to monitor or surveil NATO, I'm assuming, because I think they were installing a large antenna here, according to what I read.
From what we know, it is some sort of an antenna or some sort of an advanced radar system. It's not really sure which one it is at the moment because it does not appear that it's entirely completed yet, and we don't see any structures that have actually been stood up within the area. So it either could be an advanced radar facility, as its ground profile could be that of an antenna, or a radar facility at the moment. And I've heard multiple people and multiple sources citing different things about what this might end up being, either another advanced stationary radar platform or a larger stationary antenna platform, one or the other. We also were able to hear that while all of this was going on in Kaliningrad and the statements were being made by the Belarusians today, Lithuania has now officially closed its airspace around the areas of the Belarusian border. This is, of course, just weeks before the beginning of the Zapad 2025 military exercises and coming in light of the continuing devolvement of the situation within Eastern Europe, where we see that the Russian Federation and Belarus, in terms of force posturing, appear to be threatening the very Suwalki Gap, which is a vital supply line and also reinforcement corridor for NATO forces and the Baltic states, which generally would find themselves most likely cut off by land from the rest of the NATO alliance if war was to break out. This is something that is incredibly concerning, at least in terms of the picture that is being created in the Suwalki Gap today, and it is highly suggesting to us, at least at the moment, that the Russian Federation and Belarus may actually be preparing for an actual ground war with NATO here in the coming future. It was one thing to say that the Zapad 2025 military exercises were happening. That was nothing that was incredibly concerning, at least at the outright or the outset, because that's been going on for years, annually, at the same time, every year, but generally the military exercise only had about 40,000 personnel involved. Now we are seeing that this military exercise is projected to have 110,000 troops involved, certainly enough on their own to be able to conduct an offensive into the Suwalki Gap and take the area in a lightning offensive. Not only that, but Russian forces are also building up inside of Kaliningrad, and over the course of the past several years, and specifically the past several weeks, they've started to rapidly build and construct the bases, facilities, and equipment and technology needed to be able to try and hold the Kaliningrad Oblast for as long as possible, and to possibly be able to support and construct their abilities and efforts to also conduct an offensive from Kaliningrad into the Suwalki Gap as well, creating a two-pronged offensive, attempting to close off the Suwalki Gap in half the amount of time that would be needed for a singular one-pronged offensive to occur into the gap. All of this put together, it is once again showing us that, at least for right now, Lithuania has a very prudent necessity to be able to close off their airspace, and it also appears that Lithuania and Poland have had quite the reason to be able to prepare their defenses, at least inside of their two nations, as it does appear that things are starting to devolve a little bit further. I want to be very careful with my words there. I don't want to say that war is on the horizon. That's generally what Lukashenko said, but still the situation is becoming incredibly concerning. Not only that, we do have to remember that only days ago, near to the small Polish village of Ushna, just southwest of Lublin, a Shahed 136 drone actually landed and exploded inside of Poland, damaging 3 buildings within the village, and also resulting in the Polish naming the incident as a direct armed provocation by the Russian Federation against NATO states. The Republic of Poland has gone as far at this point as launching a formal protest with the Russian embassy in Warsaw after the Russian suicide drone hit Ushna on, yesterday. It also
That's kind of a
appears
weaker response than I was expecting, honestly. Just a formal protest, that's pretty standard when it comes to any type of, I guess you'd say, disagreement between the countries. This seems a lot more serious than a mere disagreement. They literally had a weapon from Russia go across a country that's at war with Russia, go all the way into Polish airspace by 100 kilometers or about 70 miles, then explode as it was armed on Polish territory. And the response is, let's lodge a formal protest. Honestly, I'm not like super anxious to go to war. I'll be honest with you. I don't want to sound like a warmonger here, but at the same time, though, we should give that type of incident its due diligence, I guess you could say, and actually properly address it with the severity it actually has behind it. And I would say this right here is a little bit on the weak side when it comes to actually doing this. I believe when stuff like this happens, an Article 4 should be declared, which means the NATO allies get together, they have a conference, and they at least discuss it. That does not mean invoke Article 5. That would be a little bit too far, in my opinion, but at least have a conference to at least let it be known that NATO takes it serious.
I would have to agree. This is something that needs to have some kind of a response. And at least at the moment, we are not hearing a response of any type that is coming out of NATO at the moment to these sorts of developments. However, it does appear that there is a response on the horizon, at least at the moment, because the Russian Federation is starting to make things incredibly difficult from other perspectives for the United States of America, the state of Ukraine, and also the entirety of Europe and NATO as a combined military alliance. But still, nevertheless, a lot of people have been talking about the rapidly devolving situation and what appears to be the direct threat, the imminent threat that is now posed to the Suwalki Gap, at least at the moment, from the information and news that's coming out right now. And Matthew, what are people thinking about this? And what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so Lukashenko is choosing a very bad time to start threatening war once again because, of course, Zapad is coming up. The very large military exercises that are joint between Russia and Belarus, they're right around the corner, and Lukashenko is picking right now as a time to declare or at least warn of a imminent war. So also they're forming new nuke missile units as well with the Oreshnik, which also is another escalation. So what are your thoughts about where Belarus stands in this whole situation? So 57% said Belarus knows what's coming. It's going to be a war, while 34% said Belarus is merely posturing with Putin for Putin's sake, and 5% said I'm 50-50 on the question. And I would say, honestly, it's hard to say. I don't want to sound like a warmonger or a fearmonger here. So we don't know for certain if war is a certainty. It certainly looks like it's becoming more likely, but we can't say with certainty that Zapad is going to be the start of a war, even though it looks like it. So I'm going to say that it's probably merely posturing, at least for right now, but it has the potential and also has the likelihood here that it could turn into something much larger. It has that potential because we have 100,000 plus troops going into Belarus. We have nuclear capable missiles being deployed in Belarus. It's literally setting the stage for a confrontation, it seems like to me. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that it appears to be the stage for a military confrontation here within the near future. Let me go and show y'all this really quickly, because this is one of the most important things that I can show y'all right now, at least for the matter of how serious this situation is, because a lot of people like to try and mitigate it and make this sound like it's not that big of a deal, and hopefully this will load here on the side because I'm trying to get it as a piece of evidence. So hopefully this will eventually load. But in the meantime, while we wait for that to load, a lot of people are always saying, oh, this is not anything big. The Russians would never invade NATO. That would be suicidal for them. That would be quite stupid. They would not only lose that war, but that would also cause them a great deal of damage. As a matter of fact, the Russian state would most likely cease to exist. And I once again want to remind everyone that everyone said the exact same thing leading up to the war in Ukraine, that the Ukrainians would never get invaded. That would be suicidal for the Russians to do. The Russians would be condemned condemned internationally, they would be sanctioned heavily, and also they might not even really stand to win, or if they did stand to win, there still would be larger issues and altercations to come down the line as an aftermath of that sort of an action. Let me show you all this really quickly. This is a direct statement from the parliamentary question segment at the European Union Parliament that occurred on the 16th of June of this year. And this was a written answer to a question given to the Commission about the upcoming Zapad 2025 military exercise. However, and I'm just going to read the most important part. However, experts in intelligence analysis suggest that the actual numbers could be significantly higher in terms of the troops present. In view of the current geopolitical situation, this year's exercise could feature even more brazen provocations, including scenarios involving the use of tactical nuclear weapons, which has actually turned out to be true. The Belarusian Ministry of Defense did state that they are already going to be trying to generally create that provocation by having possibly nuclear armed forces present in the exercise, and accidental incursions by military forces into European Union territory. At the same time, there is a risk that this exercise could be used as a cover for an actual military escalation. This was the measured written statement by the European Union Parliament about what their intelligence and what their information is leading them to say is a credible and imminent threat being posed by this upcoming Zapad 2025 military exercise this year. And a lot of people would love to say and play it down, oh, this might not be an imminent threat. They might just be building up their forces to try and scare us a little bit. But that's what everyone said to remind everyone that led up to the war in Ukraine. Everyone said, oh, the Russians just don't want Ukraine to join NATO. They're just building up their forces to intimidate them. The Russians would never invade Ukraine. And then they did. And that took the whole world by shock when they did, because absolutely nobody imagined that the Russians would take that kind of a drastic action and then 3.5 years later still be in a war with the state of Ukraine with 1 million men lost in the conflict. That would have never been seen during that time. This is something that is quite similar. The buildups in Kaliningrad, the buildups directly across the Suwalki Gap in Grodno on the northwestern region of Belarus, along with the fact that the Belarusians are saying that they're getting ready for war, along with the fact that they're going to be including possibly nuclear armed forces in this upcoming exercise, along with the fact that a Russian drone just exploded inside of Poland, and the Russian Federation has made no comment to the matter as to whether that was deliberate or accidental, or has even issued an official apology to the Republic of Poland about the incident. Also, given the fact that the Russian Federation is continuing to pressure and threaten the Azerbaijanis because the Russians are continuing to attack Azerbaijani interests inside of Ukraine, and the Azerbaijanis are now saying that they will no longer stand for that. And also given the fact that the Russian Federation is not actually looking for a peace in Ukraine, but is continuing to try and stall the West. And on top of all that, they are now running out of critical fuel products needed to run their entire country. Everything is coming together right now to generally create what we could describe as a perfect storm for the Russians to take the drastic action of actually starting a war with NATO. That's one thing that I have to say.
Don't forget as well, by the way, that Russia just attacked today. They attacked an American electronics manufacturing plant right on the border with Hungary that was in Ukraine. They attacked it with multiple calibers and they destroyed it completely, knowing that it was an American factory and knowing that peace talks were still ongoing. They attacked that factory anyway, intentionally, on purpose, which is obviously a huge escalation on their part. And it makes you wonder, what is Putin's end goal? Because if he did that quick, like after the peace talks started falling apart, it seems pretty aggressive to me. But would this troop buildup in Belarus that's coming up with these exercises, a lot of people are asking for sure, where are they possibly going to invade if it does happen? Now, of course, it could just be an exercise and it could go away and it might be nothing. It could turn out to be a nothing burger and it's simply an exercise like it appears to be. Or it could turn out to be maybe an invasion of a new territory. Would they go for a NATO country, like for example the Baltic states, or would they try to maybe go and use those forces in Belarus to launch a northern direction invasion back into Ukraine? Which one do you think it would likely be between the two?
Out of those two, the most highly likely action that the Russians would take would be a preparatory offensive action or a first strike action to take the city of Suwalki and the East 67 highway heading into Lithuania. That is the most common action that could be taken at this moment, as the Russian Federation's forces are already amassing around the outskirts of the city of Grodno, and we are also hearing of the introduction of 2 new brigades of unknown types inside of the Kaliningrad Oblast. I want to make it somewhat clear that we do not know know what these brigades are at the moment. They could be motorized, mechanized, or armor brigades, and they may also be some sort of a special brigade as well, such as a rocket artillery or a logistics brigade that generally takes a more supporting role to frontline fighting forces. That at the moment we do not know, at least in the terms of the quality of those troops that have just arrived and what they would be capable of. However, it is quite clear that based off of the Russian groupings in this area, and also based off of the fact that the Zapad 2025 military exercises are specifically designed and tailored with the forces and equipment present to be able to conduct an armed invasion of the Suwalki Gap and take it, that they would have the forces and types of equipment needed to be able to rapidly advance into the Suwalki Gap and take the city of Suwalki as quickly as possible. There's also another important fact that I do have to point out that I've been doing some research on lately, and this is actually something that could be a bit of an Achilles heel. Technically, Poland and Lithuania actually have to let Russian military convoys through.
Wait a minute, what? Now explain that, please.
They have to let Russian military convoys through the Suwalki Gap.
And is that by treaty, or what's the legal basis for that?
So the treaty is that the Russian military can transport a convoy through the Suwalki Gap, and the Polish and the Lithuanians cannot stop them as long as the Russians declare that it is a humanitarian convoy.
I would say in the real world, that may be the treaty. But in the real world, though, if we're going to war with Russia and NATO's having to defend itself, I would say that treaty can probably just be nullified at probably just a moment's notice if we need to. And we can start, eliminating those convoys if needed. Because why would we nonsensically adhere to a goofy treaty like that if we're suddenly having to fight Russia and we're fighting basically to the end because they're invading NATO? That wouldn't make much sense.
Well, the thing is that of course that wouldn't stand once a war started, but the problem with that is that if the Russians declare that they're letting a humanitarian convoy to Kaliningrad from the area of Grodno, the Polish and the Lithuanians can't refuse without creating a major diplomatic incident. So they can just send an entire convoy filled with infantry and a motorized brigade, say, across the border. Nobody knows that it's not an infantry brigade. They think it's just Ural 4320s filled with humanitarian supplies for Kaliningrad. And then once they get to Suwalki, they just hop out and start a offensive into the city immediately. And then an armed force comes across the border to relieve them. Pretty much meaning that they're able to quite literally start the war in the middle of the Suwalki Gap, and then the larger part of their force could come to relieve that attacking force, the initial attacking force, if that was the case. I actually found that out just a couple of hours ago. Actually, I was reading about that because someone mentioned that somewhere in a hypothetical start to the war. They're like, "Oh, a humanitarian convoy could just come through," and I was like, I don't know if they can. I pulled it up. Turns out that that is actually an existing treaty. So they can largely, in a sense, like David Andrew in the chat said, Trojan horse their way pretty much straight to the city of Suwalki, and then start off their offensive with practically an entire battalion or two of infantry already in Suwalki and holding it, waiting to be relieved by a main Russian attacking force coming from the city of Grodno.
Well, at least though we would have some pre-warning if they try to do a Trojan horse style attack like that, because obviously if Russia suddenly out of the blue starts sending large, quote unquote humanitarian convoys through the Suwalki Gap over to Kaliningrad, then that would obviously be a red flag. The wise thing, I think what NATO would probably do at that point is if they decide to let them through anyway, which I would be kind of 50-50 about whether or not they simply say you can't do that or not and just deny the treaty up front. But they would probably have troops put in place to at least prepare for that contingency in case it was some type of Trojan horse attack. But honestly, though, to me, that seems like that would be unlikely because it seems like we would have intelligence knowing ahead of time if they were planning something like that, and we would be pre-warned to a certain degree if that was going to be the case, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I would have to say so. I think that that's probably what's going to be the case, but at least for the moment, that is something of a loophole that the Russians can use to Trojan horse their way into the Suwalki Gap and quite literally put themselves in a position where they're holding the key choke point, the city of Suwalki, before the major Russian offensive even technically began. So in a sense, what this would end up being, in a more creative way, would be like the Hostomel airport attack by the VDV, but instead of flying them in helicopters, they literally drive across the border under the guise of humanitarian convoy and then drive themselves straight to Suwalki and take it without a single shot being fired. That can hypothetically happen if for some reason someone was asleep at the wheel, and if there wasn't a attempt by the Polish or the Lithuanians to try and conduct a customs inspection to see that the back of the trucks weren't just filled with a whole bunch of humanitarian aid, but a whole bunch of, Motostrelki rifle brigades pretty much sitting there in the back of the trucks waiting to make it to Suwalki. So we'll have to see how that generally turns out. But for now, the situation is somewhat strenuous around that area. Nevertheless, it does appear that a lot of people are also talking about the Russians possibly conducting some further offensive actions towards to the Baltic states. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so we have seen the sudden deployment of troops to Kaliningrad. Just out of the blue, more troops have been sent by Russia in the midst of a troop shortage that Russia's having on the front lines like usual. Somehow they found some men to spare to send to Kaliningrad. So obviously that raises some red flags. And also we see the satellite intel showing a force buildup and also showing the fact that they're building new armaments and new force, I guess you could say, structures inside of Kaliningrad as well. So 62% said Putin is probably preparing to invade the Baltics, while 17% said it seems ominous, but really need some more information first. And 14% said Putin is preparing to defend Kaliningrad instead of invade a country. And right now, it looks like there are enough troops in Kaliningrad probably to defend it, at least for a while. But I would say there's not enough troops in Kaliningrad right now to invade the Baltics. It could be maybe a support force if maybe Russia decided to invade from Belarus. But from Kaliningrad, there's simply not enough troops there to start an invasion, at least in my opinion. So I would say it's probably more in defense of Kaliningrad than it is otherwise. Because, of course, if war starts between Russia and NATO, Kaliningrad would be taken very rapidly by the NATO forces, and Russia would want to defend it, and they would need troops there to defend it. So I'm with the 14%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I would have to believe that the Russian Federation, if they were conducting any sort of an offensive, would most likely close off the Suwalki Gap immediately, which would be prerequisite to an attempted offensive to capture the Baltic states. But they will be going primarily for the Baltic states, as that is the weakest link of the NATO alliance in terms of its defensive capabilities, and for that reason, that will most likely be the easiest one for the Russians to take. So I would have to be with the 62% as well. I think that they would be trying to invade the Baltics. But still, outside of that, I see a lot of people going, there is no way that a treaty like that exists out there where we just allow Russian convoys through. Technically, there is. I don't want to find the exact one because, of course, the treaty is very long-winded and worded, but just to pull it up really quickly for y'all, there is a AI overview of it, and it does get the main agreement, which is the 2002 European-Russia Agreement. And that is the treaty that pretty much is laid out that Russia can just drive a convoy through Lithuania at any moment to get from Belarus to Kaliningrad, and that's just it. The Lithuanians did put some restrictions on that after 2022, but as long as the Russians declare that their military convoy is only carrying humanitarian aid, generally as long as they declare it to be humanitarian aid, the Lithuanians, by treaty, have to take that statement at face value and let it through.
Interesting. That is wild because I was doing some quick research on it myself because I really haven't heard that before. I'll be honest, it's the first time I've heard that. The Suwalki Agreement is apparently one of the foundational treaties which indicate what Russia can do in that area. And I'll be honest, I got to read it some more because I can't really scan it that quick. But it does appear that it does give some type of privileges to Russia to go through the area and go to Kaliningrad. But that appears to be something that I would have to read further into because it looks like it could be a little bit more complicated than just face value.
It's a lot more complicated in detail, but there is a specific provision that does say, like, just to put this out there, there is a specific provision that says that if the Russians get a humanitarian convoy going, which usually is run by an armed force of some type somewhere, so it could use, for example, let me go, I'll show you all this, 4320s. So if a whole bunch of these were lined up in a row, and they were just filled with infantry and supplies, such as their Korna ATGMs, all those sorts of deals, and they just loaded them in the back and they closed the tarpaulin covers, and then the Russians declared, hey, tomorrow at this time we're going to have a convoy of like 50 Urals, and they're going to be driving to Kaliningrad filled with humanitarian aid. The Lithuanians, by treaty, in theory, just have to go, okay, and then they just open up the gate to the border and they drive through, and they start driving to Kaliningrad. But at that point, once they pass through, who's to say what's in the back of the truck? Well, I have to look into that a little bit more because generally, from what I've heard, the Lithuanians, under a premise of diplomatic goodwill, have to take the declaration at face value that's humanitarian aid, and I do not believe that they have a treaty right to a customs inspection, but I'll have to do a little bit more looking into the customs inspection side of things, because from what I was understanding and reading today, it didn't appear that there was a customs provision allowed, meaning that the Russians declared the contents of their trucks to be humanitarian. It was just accepted that that was allowed through, and they'd allow the entire convoy through. So I'll have to look into that a little bit more.
That might be, but I haven't had a chance to read it. That might be what the treaty says, but it looks like several Europeans in the chat are saying that the way it works in reality is every car that goes through that area gets highly investigated and checked, and there's border checkpoints all over the place. So if they want to drive from Russia into that area, they can, but they have to have explicit permission from the border checkpoint guards, and they have to get investigated and also examined before they go through the area. So it looks like it could be a lot different in practice, at least in the modern day. The treaty might say something to that effect, but it's actually done much different, apparently, according to the Europeans in the chat.
Also, I see some people saying that as well. You can't drive through Russia. Well, it's not the EU into the Baltics. It's specifically through Lithuania only. That's what the treaty outlines. I'll have to look into that a little bit more. But also, I'd also had to say this, man. While some people are saying that in the chat, they're saying that from what it sounds like to be cars, not military vehicles that are declared to be carrying humanitarian aid. So I think there might be a different provision for them. I'll have to read the actual treaty in great detail to see what that is about, because I think by technicality, if it's a military convoy of the Russian army and they declare it's humanitarian aid, they let them through.
Well, hopefully they're checking, because that'd be wild. I honestly would not honor that agreement if I was Poland or one of the countries operating near the Suwalki Gap. I would definitely be inspecting every single vehicle, no matter what it was, cars, trucks, military vehicles. I would be inspecting everything if it were me, but I'm not really sure how they're really doing it on the ground. We'll have to do some more research.
Yeah, I would have to say so. We'll have to do a great deal of research on that, because when I found out about that today, Matthew, I was like, that's why I also didn't tell Matthew about this before the stream, folks, because I wanted it to be a legit bombshell that is a thing. But I'll have to do a lot more research into it and see if that's actually the case. If it is, that's very concerning, and Lithuania needs to try and fix that loophole. But anyways, moving on from that, we have been able to hear that the diplomatic situation between the Russians and the United States has quite truly pretty much collapsed as of today. And the reason why it collapsed is actually inside of Ukraine, near to the city of Uzhorod. Just to the southeast of the city of Uzhorod, directly along the Slovakian border, is the town of Mukachevo. Mukachevo is a somewhat larger town within this area, and it is actually a part of former Czechoslovakia. This little area down here, near to the city of Uzhorod, was once a part of Czechoslovakia. But at the end of at the end of World War II, and the beginning of the creation of, the reformation, the best way to say it, of the Ukrainian SSR, they actually took away this little tail to Czechoslovakia and they gave it to Ukraine. And then they reformed Czechoslovakia out of the modern day nations of Slovakia and Czechia's borders, or the Czech Republic's borders. This area, however, has ended up becoming somewhat economically significant to the state of Ukraine, and we have been able to see that foreign economic ventures, including those that are American, have set up shop here with some larger factories producing domestic consumer items within the town of Mukachevo. Overnight, the Russian Federation fired 5 Kalibr cruise missiles at an American factory in this area and absolutely slammed it. We were able to get video and picture evidence of the damage caused to this factory, and it was unbelievable. The factory was pretty much entirely destroyed as a result of the Kalibr strikes, and there were a decent amount of people who were reported to be wounded around the surrounding area, including, at the last report that I was able to hear of, around 14, although there were 600 workers on site when the strike occurred, and those numbers could be updated to include fatalities and further wounded. But these pictures are painting an incredibly grim scene, and you can also see the cloud of smoke rising from the factory over the city of Mukachevo in this clip.
Wild to see that Russia hit it with actually multiple calibers. That's the part to me that got me earlier when I reported in the short word video. Multiple calibers hit this place, so it wasn't like it was an accident or something. They didn't just accidentally lob one missile at it and that was the end of it. They hit it multiple times. I mean, look at that. I mean, the whole thing's shredded.
I mean, it's absolutely obliterated, and it was hit with 5 calibers. And from what we were able to hear, these 5 calibers did not hit in the same spot over and over. They were actually strategically landing at different areas and different sectors of the factory to try and completely destroy the facility, which it appears that they were successful in doing. This is the first time that an American industrial concern within Ukraine's borders has ever been directly attacked and destroyed outright by the Russian Federation. As a result of this attack today, the United States of America has now changed its stance almost overnight on the Russian Federation, and we were able to hear these following developments in the United States as a result. First off, we were able to hear, this was before the news of the strike came out earlier this morning, that the president stated in a direct quote, "We will find out within 2 weeks whether there will be peace in Ukraine. After that, we may have to choose a different tactic." Then, after the news of this attack came out, we were then able to hear later that the U.S. has now officially completely withdrawn from Russian-Ukrainian peace talks. We also were able to hear, not long after that, this statement directly from the President of the United States on social media. "It is very hard, if not impossible, to win a war without attacking an invader's country. It's like a great team in sports that has a fantastic defense, but is not allowed to play offensive. There is no chance of winning. It is like that with Ukraine and Russia." We will not speak of the political stuff, but another guy who was in the government would not let Ukraine fight back, only defend. How did that work out? Regardless, this is a war that would have never happened if I was the president. Zero chance. Interesting times ahead. Generally suggesting that the Ukrainians should go on the offensive now against the Russian Federation, and in the larger sense, take the fight to the Russians. This is a complete change from prior days of statements, and we also were able to hear that the United States of America is now trying to bring even more pressure against the Republic of India by openly stating today that the Republic of India is a laundromat, laundering Russian oil, circumventing sanctions around the entirety of the globe. That also came today while in Moscow, the Indian foreign minister was present, meeting the president of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, and we were able to see that in this clip right here.
Oh, look, good friends, of course. Look at that.
It's
good old
great to
Putin. I
see
wonder if
you.
that's the real one this time. Is that the real Putin or the fake one?
The water is blue.
Honestly, though, if there was going to be a fake Putin meeting somebody, it would be something like in the Kremlin, because that's a much easier environment to try to fake, like Putin's presence would be here. So if it was somebody, also notice that's the long table he usually uses, but this time he's actually sitting horizontal instead of vertical to the table, like at the both ends of it. He's actually closer this time, so I think he's maybe gotten over some paranoia.
I think there was just so many people in the room he couldn't get away with it, so he had to sit right across from him. But still, they of course called themselves great friends and talked about further cooperation. Still, it does appear that at least at the moment, the United States of America is generally starting to view the Russians in a hostile manner, especially after the attack that occurred on the American factory at Mukachevo in Ukraine earlier today. And a lot of people have been talking about their thoughts and opinions on that development. Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so for the first time today, a historic incident, Putin, for the first time ever, struck and destroyed an American manufacturing plant with multiple Kalibr missiles, not just one, but several major large missiles. And what are your thoughts? 83% said it was intentional to test the U.S. response, while 13% said the factory was a legitimate military target for the Russians, and 1% said it was accidental and just a big incident. And I would say definitely intentional. The Russians had to know that manufacturing plant was an American facility that had American investment and interest. They had to know that. It was common knowledge, and it was in the wide open for the public to see. So when they struck it, they knew what they were striking. It was all the way over on the border with Hungary, and that's a very far distance over. That's right at the very edge of Ukraine, and they would have to be intentional with it if they were trying to hit it. It's not an accident. So they were doing this, in my opinion, to see what the U.S. was going to do in response to it, and we saw the U.S. president make that statement on Truth Social, which I believe was the equivalent of the U.S. response, and he basically threatened Russia to give Ukraine the green light to start going on the offensive against the Russian Federation, and also give them the United States blessing to do that. So I'm with the 83%. But Enforcer, what say you?
You do not fire 5 Kalibr cruise missiles that far into Ukraine, all 5 of them hitting the same factory, and it's an accident. I'm definitely with the 83%. This was an intentional attack against a U.S. industrial concern and a U.S. industrial interest inside of Ukraine to try and test the United States' resolve, and to also start to try and possibly sour the diplomatic talks to once again pretty much restart it from square one, and in theory reset the clock on upcoming sanctions or further support for the state of Ukraine. I think that that was the general intent or action that the Russian Federation made today with that attack onto the factory, but it is wildly clear at this point that the Russian Federation is not attempting any kind of peace talk or any sort of a reconciliation of U.S.-Russian relations in good faith. They are doing it only in bad faith at this moment to try and give themselves an advantage in the current conflict and the current situation by stalling the United States and the greater part of the Western alliance. It is clear at this point that there is no way forward rather than to continue on with the war and to pretty much bring the Russians to their knees, as there really will be no other way to see an end to this conflict rather than forcing the Russian Federation to heel. Outside of that, though, we also were able to hear inside of Belgium, to add to this as well, speaking of the intentional testing of the United States and the complete collapse of diplomatic relations, that this statement was given today earlier about the situation with the talks. Lavrov's pushback on security guarantees has effectively fractured Russia's talks with the United States, a European official with knowledge of the matter said. The Kremlin may now try to convince the White House to abandon the push for security guarantees for Ukraine and downgrade the Putin-Zelensky meeting to one with lower-level officials in an effort to dodge new U.S. sanctions, the official added. Zelensky and the delegation of European leaders rushed to the White House on Monday for talks with the president after the U.S. president rolled out the red carpet for Putin at their summit and appeared to swing towards Russia's position on the war. I don't actually know where he swung towards it, but oh well. He abandoned demands for Putin to agree to a ceasefire ahead of negotiations and said Ukraine would have to concede territories to Russia as part of a settlement. The talks in Washington yielded a commitment from the president, at least for now, to joint security guarantees for any peace deal and reserve discussion on territorial swaps with Russia for later. I'll be honest with y'all, I actually don't know who specifically wrote this article, but I'm not going to lie, this is a very one-sided sort of a statement that was made in it. He abandoned demands to agree to a ceasefire and said that the Ukrainians would have to concede territories. He didn't say that. He more so said the Russians are saying that they have to concede territories, but that's up for Zelensky to decide. That was said well before the Monday meeting, actually. So I don't know why the article was written in this way. The article makes it sound like the Ukrainians are getting shafted. The Ukrainians are actually in a fairly good position right now in terms of foreign policy compared to all the other times that they've been dealing with the United States over the past few months, so that was a little bit odd for them to write that in. But outside of that, I would have to say that at least for the moment, it does appear that everyone is considering that the talks have entirely collapsed, and there doesn't really appear to be a future at trying to conduct peace talks with the Russians. Now, with all that in mind, it does appear that the Russians have also had to take an action today because of their own gross incompetence. A Russian general was dismissed earlier today, who actually quite literally slept through the Ukrainian offensive into the Kursk region last year. Moscow confirmed the removal of General Alexander Lapin, commander of the Sever Army Group overseeing the Kursk, Sumy, and Kharkiv directions. He was replaced by Yevgeny Nikiforov. Lapin previously led the Center Group at the start of the invasion and retreated from the Kharkiv region during Ukraine's 2022 counteroffensive. This is Lapin, and this is his replacement right here, Nikiforov.
So the first guy right there, go back to his image real quick. This guy right here just slept through the whole thing. He just like kicked back and just slept through the whole thing. That's kind of wild.
Dude, he said, Ukraine counteroffensive at Kharkiv where we lose 50 miles of ground. I was so woke. Ukrainians invading the Russian Federation. I sleep. Bruh, this guy had his priorities straight, though.
Also, by the way, wasn't the Kadyrov's men also protecting Kursk as well? To my knowledge, they were there, and they were also caught sleeping as well. What is that the excuse for everybody now in Kursk? Everybody was sleeping?
Whoa, wait a minute. I think you're forgetting. You're really dissing these guys a lot, bro. The Akhmat wasn't sleeping. They were on a lunch break. They just happened to leave the front line all at the same. Yeah, like remember they said
they were on the lunch break.
Yeah, they said we all just happened to leave the front line at the exact same time, just 10 minutes before the offensive began, because we were all getting lunch. Like, remember?
Yeah, I remember that now. I forgot all about that crazy excuse.
Bro, that was the stupidest excuse I have ever heard. But that was what the Akhmat said. But apparently he was in charge of the Sever Army Group that the Akhmat was subordinate to, and he was also asleep when this happened, and he slept through the whole opening of it. So the Ukrainians had taken Suja and already were advancing to Malaya Lagnia by the time he had woke up and he even heard that they had invaded it all. So there was a full-scale offensive underway into Russia by the point this guy woke up. So he's finally been removed from his position. Most likely they'll bring up corruption charges against him later. That's the common thing they do in Russia to purge people these days, is that they'll say he misappropriated state funds, and because everyone in Russia does, corruption's rife, so you can get everyone on a corruption charge, and then they'll put him away in prison for like 40 years or some long period like that, which pretty much guarantees, based off of how old he is, that he'll most likely die in prison and never get out, or they'll just off him at some point. So a little bit odd that he did that. Also, by the way, some people are like, how the hell do you even do that? Well, it's because if he was the commander of the Sever army group in the Kursk Oblast, high chances were that he was sleeping in a house somewhere in Moscow when this was going down, and he just didn't wake up because no one called him, or someone called him and then he just hung up the phone and went right back to sleep, because Kursk is a part of the Central Military District. Let me go and find the Military District Russia. Let me go get that really quickly. So this is the current map of the military districts in Russia, and you'll notice that the Belgorod and the Kursk Oblasts are both a part of the Moscow Military District, and the Moscow Military District is headquartered out of Moscow. The Southern Military District, which is the one responsible for the war in Ukraine, is headquartered out of the city of Rostov-on-Don. But the Moscow Military District is the one responsible for the Kursk area, and most likely is the one responsible for the Sever army group that this guy was commanding when the invasion began. So he was probably in Moscow when this whole thing started, because most of the top generals commanding the war in Ukraine are not inside of Ukraine. They're actually inside of the city of Rostov-on-Don, within the central military headquarters of the city. So I hope that does explain why he would have even been asleep, because a lot of people are like, how the hell can you sleep through an invasion? It's because he was technically about 300 miles away when it was going on, but he was still asleep, and Akhmat was on lunch, so everyone was kind of sleeping on the job or eating or something. You know,
What a joke.
man. But
Honestly, what a complete joke, by the way. And also, by the way, like for example, you see the Russians. The Russians try to make a breakthrough, like for example, through Ukraine's front lines, and also where they invaded in Russia. Obviously, where they went through the Akhmat were on their lunch break. That was basically Russia's front lines. That breakthrough went on for months, months and months and months. When the Russians do the same thing to the Ukrainian front lines, they end that within like a week or less. Even with being sparingly with men, they still ended in a week or less. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. Really, it's nuts. It's hilarious. Really, because a lot of people were talking about, oh my God, this Russian breakthrough at IMMINENT, Alexander Syrsky's head ought to roll. Like everyone was saying that he ought to be put in prison for that. They wiped out the entire battalion, and I think there's only about a company and a half left as of today of that lost battalion, and it's pretty much non-existent at this point. They've technically been destroyed right now. But that's how that offensive went. The Ukrainian offensive took about an entire 8 months for the Russians to be able to push it mostly back across the Ukrainian border. That was a whole 8 months, and they got as far as the city of Korenivo, and all the way out nearly to Lagov at one point. They were only a few miles away from the nuclear power plants at Ivanovo. Like, they were not that far away.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
honestly, that's nuclear. That's nuclear power status. That's superpower status. When you're a superpower, you take 8 months or something like that to push the enemy out. But when you're the underdog that Russia claims is like a little weak power, it takes him less than a week to push the Russians out. It kind of seems like there's something that doesn't add up.
I got to tell you, something isn't adding up. But you know, Matthew, I heard that Russian general, he said, when I got here, this place was nothing but a mudland. Now it is a shithole. And then he got removed.
Honestly, you gotta have that iron in him.
Man, the leader of the Sever group's got to have that iron in him. Bro, apparently he didn't have the iron in him. He had an iron deficiency because he wouldn't wake up for a damn thing. But anyways, moving on from that, it is time for us to get on into the rest of the news for the night, because we have loads of more major news that has been coming out over the course of the day. But before we get on into the rest of the news that's been coming out over the course of the day, we do have to make sure to get to talking about the Russians' repeated claims that Zelensky is illegitimate. Because I forgot to mention to you all, by the way, that Sergei Lavrov today stated that Putin would not meet with Zelensky because Zelensky is an illegitimate leader of Ukraine. So they're once again right back to the shtick that Ukraine is an illegitimate government and an illegitimate state. So looks like we literally got all the way back to square one. It took us 6 months, but we're finally here again. Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right. So, despite Putin agreeing to meet with Zelensky, he told the U.S. president, "Oh, yes, I will meet with Zelensky because that's what you want and that's what we'll do. Russia wants peace." Now, Russian officials, including Lavrov, are once again calling Zelensky illegitimate, saying that they can't sign any agreements with Zelensky, even if they wanted to, because he's not a legitimate leader of Ukraine. And now Putin's refusing to meet him because of that fact. And what are your thoughts? 67% said Russia have finally nuked the peace talks, while 11% said peace talks will continue for now, and 16% said they will slowly fade out. And don't take my word for it, take the European leaders' word for it. They said today that the talks have basically fragmented as a result of those statements today by the Russian officials. They've completely backed out of every promise they made at the Alaska meeting. They've backed out of everything. There's literally nothing they have stuck to. So there's nothing to discuss at this point. It's pretty much over. If they want to keep stringing the talks out, they could, theoretically, but in reality, there's no productive reason to do that because all the things that are up for debate are now being shot down by the Russian officials. So just honestly insane. Like the 180 was predictable. We said it was coming, and it's finally here today. And Lavrov, the horse, was the one to break the news to us with his horse feed. But I'm with a 68%. And Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that I'm with the 68% as well. I'd have to say that the Russians have nuked the peace talks. Claiming that a government is illegitimate pretty much means that you're not having any dealings with them. This is something that actually might be funny to all of y'all, but the United States throughout the whole Cold War stated that the East Germans, the DDR or the Deutsche Democratic Republic, was an illegitimate government. The entire war, the entire Cold War, we stated that they were illegitimate. So if any U.S. Military officer or any military service member ever had to drive through East Germany to make it to Berlin, we would completely refuse, along with the British, every single time an East German officer came up to them and asked anything. The only response given is, "I will speak to a Soviet officer only. I do not recognize your authority. I will only speak to a Soviet." And then they would bring out a Soviet officer. So it's kind of a similar thing, because as far as the United States was concerned, the East Germans were an illegitimate state. Technically they were, because the Soviets had broken an agreement that we had all made, that we were going to occupy Germany all together, quarter it up, and then we were going to unite it all together at a later date and end up creating a unified Germany again that was denazified. The Soviets pretty much lied to us. And then they pretty much allowed the East German state to exist separately, and that's why that whole thing happened, and that's why Germany wasn't unified for about 40 years. But outside of that, that is something that generally means that, much like America got nowhere with East Germany, we're going to be getting nowhere on peace talks with Ukraine, because the Russians view them as illegitimate, which is a little bit stupid, because they actually had a legitimate, fair election, and Zelensky is the president. It's like they might not like him, but he's the legitimate president of Ukraine. So we're getting absolutely nowhere from here on, because if they're not willing to accept the Ukrainian government as a legitimate government, that means they'll never talk to them about anything, even if it is in their favor, because they're going to claim that he's an illegitimate president. So he does not represent the state of Ukraine. So there's literally nothing to talk about from beyond this point. The peace talks are over. So I hope that
That's got to irritate the president. Like all jokes aside, I know people have their preferences and opinions about the U.S. president, but the president genuinely went into that meeting in Alaska on the last time he went into. I can't remember what day it was, but he went into that meeting in Alaska. I believe he seriously thought that maybe there was some chance that Putin would somehow be able to be talked into a peace. I think he might have legitimately thought that, even though it was kind of a little bit out there. I think he thought that. So he got all these promises from Putin. He was all gleeful. He was smiling. He was happy. He was happy-go-lucky. He thought he was going to get that Nobel Prize. And Putin has done such a 180 so quick, like a lot quicker than I was even expecting, that it really, honestly, really, it's going to probably provoke a really angry reaction from the U.S. president, because it kind of makes him look a bit silly. I was kind of understating that a bit. It makes him look a bit silly after all that trouble he went through in Alaska and all that meeting, all that setup and everything, just to end up with Putin flipping around in less than a week on literally every promise he made.
You know, I got to say this, because this is something to be learned in foreign policy, folks. When you talk to a foreign leader, just because you think that they are your friend does not mean that that has any pull. It has none. Like, it has none at all. Like, having a somewhat amicable or friendly relationship with another leader, or at least what you perceive to be one, will get you absolutely nowhere. There has to be some sort of inherent benefit to whatever you're proposing for them to agree to it. So this was not going to go anywhere. And this is something that I think a lot of people misunderstand. Having a president of the United States that a whole bunch of world leaders either hate or love really has nothing to do with anything for the most part. Like, if they love him, that doesn't go anywhere. If they hate him, that doesn't really go anywhere either. Because, I mean, if all of Europe hated the U.S. president, they're still going to have a lot of relations with the United States. The United States is still going to have a decent sway over him because we have a major trade relationship with them. So it doesn't really matter whether they like him or not. If they love him, it's all the they doesn't really matter. I mean, they still have a significant relationship with the United States because of the trade, not because they like the guy who's in charge of the country, at least in the office of the president. None of that actually matters. I don't know why people actually pretend like it matters. Like, they're like, oh, this guy, he's loved by these people. It's like, well, it doesn't matter. It's like they'll turn on him in an instant if he proposes something they don't agree with or it's against their national interests. So, this is sort of a roundabout kind of a way of seeing that ends up becoming true, is that, the president of the United States went, I know some guy, and then he called him up, had him meet in Anchorage, and then it resulted in quite literally nothing. As a matter of fact, it seems that it turned out worse, I guess you could say, in a sense, because he actually tried to pull the I know some guy sort of a routine and called him up and met with him in Anchorage, and he's still doing what he's doing, even at that. So it ended up looking worse. It ended up at the same result either way, but now it looks worse because we actually tried to make him get to a peace agreement, and now he's not even close to it. So remember that, folks. When dealing in foreign policy, it's not about who's friends with who likes to sit around tables with each other, who gets along and laughs the most, who gets quirky little selfies at DMZs, or anything like that. It really just matters about what is our position, what is their position. Does it work? Does it not? What do we have to do to secure our interests? This isn't about friendships. It's business out here. And that's what a lot of people need to get. I don't really think the president got that. I think he's having to learn a little bit quickly here. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least from what I can see at the moment, from what's going on in the foreign policy world. But with that, it is time for us to move on into East Asia for a brief moment, and then on into the Middle East, and then on into the frontline news in Ukraine, and also a little bit of periphery news of some strikes that happened in Russia, maybe a little strike that happened near Dezhankoy, and also a little bit more riot police news from Serbia. But before we get on into all of that, I do want to make sure that we address just a couple of questions before we move on into the rest of the news for the night. So, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so our first super chat of the night goes to LC39A. He's, of course, a channel legend. He's been throwing in crazy support over the last, I believe, 2 weeks it is now. And thank you very much, LC39A, for that $137 support. Hey! And we appreciate it very much. And, of course, that does help keep the channel running, and we sincerely do appreciate that. And he said, LSA, y'all.
And I gotta say, a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we would have never been able to keep this channel running and make this thing possible. And we wouldn't have ever been able to make it a reality. We wouldn't be able to say, long live the Lee Spring Army, up until this day, LC39A. So I gotta thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that did address that incredibly well, because you are one of the largest supporters of the channel in this current day and age, and helping us to make this channel possible to a significant degree. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Hal Rose, another channel legend, by the way, and he puts in a $33 donation, and thank you very much, Hal, as well, for that $33 support, the trademark support, by the way. And he also says, Enforcer Matt, Putin thinks might makes right, and may Ukraine be mightier, and Slava Ukraine. And honestly, Hal, that is generally what the Russian government believes they understand is strength. They try to project strength. That's what people believe that Putin understands is strength. So I believe we should give Putin exactly what he wants. We should give him the world's worst secondary sanctions that have ever been put on a country in history, and let him understand that strength for a change, because Putin is trying to humiliate the United States leadership, he's trying to humiliate Europe, he's trying to attack our allies, and he's actively conducting a very horrible, basically a genocide in Ukraine. I'm going to say it that way at this point. I would call it that. I would say so. So I say show him some strength. It's about time that he gets cornered at this point, because he's getting out of control. He's going there anyway. I say let's corner him. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I'd have to say, I thank you for the support, Hal Rose. I'd also have to agree that that's pretty much what we have to do. I would also add on, though, that we should not leave the Suwalki Gap situation unanswered. I think that the U.S. should coordinate a NATO military exercise on the opposite side of the border at the exact same time with a force at least a third of the size of the Russian force that is around Grodno right now. I think that would be a smart move to make, because even with just a force a third of the size of the one that the Russians have, we would still be able to defend the Suwalki Gap. We know that for a guaranteed certainty. So with that in mind, I think that would also be a great way to be able to counter the Russian Federation and show them that the West will meet their attempts at might makes right with our own might that's mightier than their might, and therefore that mightier might makes the might right. That's, I think, how we should work it. And so with that, a big thanks to you once again for the support, Hal Rose, and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you have been around for an incredibly long time, supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running. And I got to thank you massively for that, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we would have never been able to make this channel possible and keep it rolling up until this day. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the last question of this segment, and then we're getting on into the rest of the news.
And this one goes to Jack Ray. And Jack puts in a $22 donation. And thank you very much, Jack, for that support as well. And we do appreciate that. And he said, the Akhmat were busy, let's see here. The Akhmat were crossing the Diddy line. But I'm not sure if I can say the other part, though. But they were crossing the Diddy line, apparently. A little bit of Diddy going on here. Also, by the way, Jack, I heard today that the Ukrainians hit another fuel train, which also carried lubricants as well. So I guess you could call that they smacked the Diddy train today. But Enforcer, what say you?
I got to tell you, man, dude, I actually heard that when wherever Diddy was right now, he sat down, he looked pained, and someone said, "What's wrong?" He said, "I feel a disturbance in the freak off." Like when that train got hit and like started catching on fire. Man, I'm telling you,
that's worthy of a breakdown right there. To see a lubricants train get cracked wide open, that's terrible right there. All that baby oil all over the ground. I tell you what,
man. Some people called it a trainload of lubricant. What Diddy called it was another Tuesday. like that's what
he calls that a Costco bulk pack.
The Costco put out a corporate statement: "We do not sell baby oil." Like they were clear about that, but still, I gotta say, Jack Ray, that was a pretty damn good one. I wish we could read the whole thing off, but it was a little too slick, a lot like Diddy's baby oil. But nevertheless, I do thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't have been able to make this channel possible and keep it running. And so a massive thanks to you so much once again. And also, before we move on really quickly, I do have to say that there was someone in the chat that said something. I've got to point it out. Chipper 2008, I've got to point you out because you put in all caps and it caught my attention. And I was like, you're right, that the situation that we're talking about in the Suwalki Gap is literally the very plot that is in the Broken Arrow video game that just came out. Which it's kind of funny because from what I've heard, they actually based the entire hypothetical storyline, at least the opening of it, as to how this whole thing would go, off of the fact that the war in Ukraine had begun by the time they started to develop and actually work on their storyline and implementing it into their game. So they made it hyper-realistic. And when I got the game, because we've been talking about this for the longest time now, when I got the game, I actually started to play the campaign, and I was like, wow, this is a great game, because they actually have made this as realistic as possible. To explain to y'all really quickly what they said the hypothetical war would start for, is that there was a NATO military training exercise near to Vilnius, and a Russian drone flew across the Belarusian border and was accidentally shot down because it was believed to be a training drone that the U.S. was using, and a U.S. jet shot it down. So it started a larger diplomatic incident with both sides fortifying their positions in the Suwalki Gap, and the Russians also building up forces as a part of military exercise near Grodno, and then they drove a humanitarian convoy through the Suwalki Gap, which was supposed to be a preparatory action to take the city of Suwalki, and that's what generally started the war. So very similar to what would happen in real life. And generally, generally, folks, when I saw the whole thing about the humanitarian convoy in the game, because I got the game like a month and a half ago, I was like, oh, that's just BS. There is no treaty like that. And then a couple hours ago today, I was like, is there a treaty like that? Pulled it up, and there was. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, that's a real thing, because apparently it's heavily contended in Lithuania whether that treaty should be allowed to continue or not, because of the ongoing war. So pretty wild sort of a thing. But I have to say, like, as far as Broken Arrow, they get brownie points for making their storyline in the game as realistic as possible about what was happening and how that conflict went from there. At least from what we could tell based off our analysis here on our end, it's actually pretty realistic. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Good point though that you brought up. I had to say that because if y'all didn't know, they actually got that very close to being accurate in the game. But with that, it is time for us to move on out of this question segment and on into the rest of the news that we have tonight, which is quite a lot still. Moving on over into East Asia though, I really quickly want to say, starting us off with a bang, quite literally, that a Patriot missile test inside of Taiwan actually ended up suffering a critical explosive failure today. They were able to launch the Patriot missile, but then it exploded pretty much right after launch.
I guess that's like a very uncommon one-off, because the Patriot seems to work really well everywhere else.
Yeah, I think it's the fact that this was a fairly old PAC-2 missile, from what they're saying, that was loaded into a PAC-3 launcher, for at least from what I'm hearing. And so apparently they're now investigating some sort of a reason as to why it exploded. Some people are saying that it's outdated tech and limited maintenance, but the investigation is not concluded yet. So with that in mind, on the other side of the strait, we have also been able to hear that dual civilian military ferries are now being deviated from regular routes in the Yellow Sea and arriving in the Taiwan Strait this week. You can actually see all of them here on this little boat tracker, or ship tracker is the best way to say it. You can actually see all of the ferries in orange right down here in their Guangzhou and Xiamen City. Apparently, these are being pre-positioned for some sort of an upcoming war game or possibly an actual invasion of the island of Taiwan. I have to always say it could be a possible invasion because you never really know. It could be a war game. It most likely is. I would guarantee all it is. But that could also be used for an invasion, but we'll have to wait and see what it is. Outside of that, we also got to see that satellite photography of North Korea has shown us a pretty sprawling ICBM facility right here. This is the Sinpungdong Missile Operating Base. Look at that.
Interesting. That's a lot right there. This is North Korea stuff, by the way?
This is the Democratic People's Republic of Korea.
Honestly, like I thought they were having a food problem, but they must have enough money to build weapons, of course. That seems to be on brand.
I've got to be honest with you, I think that what they're doing is absolutely stupid. Look at it. First off, they called it Simpong Dong. They named it Dong. That's kind of stupid. Second off, it's all in one small area. One nuclear weapon could take out this entire facility. There is no backups in North Korea, from what we know at least. So I would generally say this was a fairly goofy thing, because they also, like, I wish I had the satellite pictures to show you all of the ICBM base that they also have for the silos, because this isn't the one where the silos are at. But they're all grouped up in one small area. In America, we have them spread out amongst multiple states in the U.S. Midwest. Well, technically the U.S. West, because it's not the Midwest. That's a whole thing in itself. But technically, they're all spread out amongst multiple states. North Korea has them all grouped up in one small facility. So I don't know if that would actually help them out in the long run. It could all most likely be taken out in one hit. But it appears that while they're having a food shortage, they're certainly not having a shortage of military industrial projects going on, at least at the moment. But moving on from Shrimp on the Dong, or whatever that military facility was called, we will now be moving on.
Also, real quick, just a quick note, not to divert the whole news segment real quick, but just to say this, we did report the other night that the Russians sent an IL-20 Coot, which is apparently a surveillance aircraft, toward the Alaskan ADIZ, the Air Identification Zone, if I can get the whole word soup right. But apparently, they sent another one tonight. It's the IL-20 is back again at the Alaska Air Defense Zone, and NORAD has responded with F-16s and also tankers to go out and monitor the aircraft. So the second day in a row, that thing has been sent, the exact aircraft, for the second day.
Also, I saw someone say, what's an IL-20 Coot? It's this right here.
Old aircraft right there. But tell us its purpose again, just to refresh people's memory real quick. Why are they sending this 2 days in a row? Because that's kind of unusual that it's happening back to back like that.
So it's a specialized advanced reconnaissance aircraft. So what it does is that it can intercept radio broadcasts, and it also is supposed to have some sort of advanced telemetry or optronics data on board, or some sort of a data gathering system to allow it to gather a little bit of information about the military abilities we have in Alaska.
Interesting. So I don't know, maybe Putin found something interesting in Alaska when he was here. I don't know, but it seems kind of odd it's back again this quick.
Yeah, I'd have to say. So if a U.S. pilot goes up to this thing and runs it away, does he technically get cooties?
Well, it could be, or it could be just they use old pilots because they of course recruit old men, so it could just be the coot.
Imagine that guy an ATC. What? Like, he's just doing that. It's like and it's like something like in like cooter language. It's something like something landing runway 20 right, and it just comes off as. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on from this IL-20 coot things garbage really. But moving on out of that and that information that we're getting at the moment out of Alaska, it is time for us to move on from East Asia and on into the Middle East for a brief moment. We were able to hear that explosions were going on in Karachi. We're generally expecting this as typical terrorist activities. The Department of State kind of warned about in advance. And out of Iran, we've also been hearing that they suspended all flights into Western Iran due to ballistic missile tests. We also were able to see a little bit of proof of those ballistic missile tests that were being conducted earlier today. So it does seem that the Islamic Republic of Iran is testing out some of their missiles. In the meantime, we also got to see that they were conducting naval drills as well. This is from Iranian news. So we're going to mute the audio but show the clip. YouTube does not respect copyrights from Iran, from what we understand. But we can see here them showing the Nasser anti-ship missile. Holy smokes, I think that's that Hamas leader, Matthew, that got blitzed in Gaza.
Oh, damn. That's I think that might be maybe close to his name or something right there. But also, by the way, this is fair use, just to make that clear. By the way, we're commenting on this for news purposes, so that's a clear reason there. But this is big for Iran. Now, they're showing all their military equipment. Is this guy right here drinking water? Like, is he hydrated? Like, he looks a little bit thirsty. He looks a little peaked. Are you sure? Give this man a bottle of water.
Are you okay? Dude, when we go to war with Iran, and they're saying they're talking about the wicked wayward ways of the West, I'm going to get a camera and go on a live feed specifically to hold up a bottle of great value drinking water, bottled water, and just shake it in front of the camera for a minute to get it across that we're doing better than them. But we can see them launching their anti-ship missiles and also their crappy drones.
It's got to be torture to like be in the Navy in Iran because you can't drink the salt water, obviously, but you're surrounded by water.
Man, it's like being surrounded by absolutely unreal temptation for them.
So you got to hold back the urge just to get some of that salt water. Look at that. Oh, they're high-vis jackets. I didn't know the Iranians had safety as their number one priority.
Man, I thought Iran's number one priority was, restarting a caliphate or something like that. I didn't know it was safety. That's crazy.
Man, when I see Iran launching stuff for like an exercise or a test, I know that they don't have enough stuff to be doing this. This has got to hurt. Like, it's got to hurt. They have such a low supply of stuff that using this stuff for an exercise just must feel like just a pain, like for them to do this.
Dude, I bet you, man. They're crying when they do this, but they have to do it because they have to make the public think that they're somewhat competent. We can also see this egghead here sitting with some books behind him. What a nerd. He reads. What a nerd. I read.
Here in my garage with my not Lamborghini with no water. Knowledge. That's what keeps me going. Knowledge.
But you know what's better than a fridge full of bottled water? Knowledge.
A huge brimmed cap that's like 2 times the size of it shouldn't be. What the hell's up with that visor, man? That visor is like a freaking sombrero or something.
This is absolutely the opposite of Yankee with no brim. This is Yankee with all the brim. Like, this is the most brim. Dude, that is that one cap, like, that has like the fish fear me, the fish fear me. Let me go get that one. Meme hat. Let me go get that, dude. Oh my god. Bro, this is it. This is it. Hold up. Bro, it's this cap from the meme.
It really is. Like, that's crazy. I've never seen a hat with a visor on it quite like that. That's wild.
Dude, honestly, man, this thing goes out so far. The weapon behind this hat is that he can poke the enemy's eye out from a mile away with how long this brim is.
That is terrible.
I've never seen that in my life. That is the goofiest looking hat. And also it's like perfectly round. Like, it's not even like a real like baseball cap or like a trucker cap. That is the shittiest looking baseball cap I've ever seen.
I would say.
I think he realizes it looks stupid too. Like he kind of is like he seems like he has low self-esteem. But anyways, moving on from that, that's everything that was happening in Iran today. You know, it is what it is. And meanwhile, inside of southern Lebanon, we also got to see the leader of Hezbollah. Well, another leader of Hezbollah was killed today in an airstrike. Womp womp. Moving on from that, we also got to hear that another Hezbollah weapons depot was also hit within the southern area of the country. This video wasn't loading earlier, and it's not loading right now. But the Israelis did hit a weapons cache within the area. Moving on from that, that is all of our news in the Middle East, and that's going to be bringing us right back up into Europe, because we were able to see more actions of the Serbian riot police earlier today inside of the anti-Vučić protests. Take a look at this.
They got those trucks loaded down. There's like enough guys right there to take on some people. Oh, look, they're going toward a big crowd. That's why. They're just, what type of riot trucks are those, too? They got like snow-like things in the front. What's that one scraping a box on the ground?
Are those Unimogs?
I can't tell. Like, it kind of looks like it a little bit.
Kind of does. This thing is dragging a dumpster in front of it.
They're going to bully the people out of the protest. They're going to dunk them in the dumpster.
Man, they cruising for Brucing quite literally down there. But still, the protests have been going on for quite some time now, and it doesn't appear that they're subsiding anytime soon. Moving on out of Serbia, however, and on up into the rest of the news that we've been able to get outside of the Russian Federation. We have been able to hear that the Ukrainians hit the Inertia pumping station again. They just patched it up and got it fixed. The Ukrainians hit it a second time, because it's even funnier, a second time. Look at that roast. Russian.
I think they're eventually going to knock this thing out permanently, probably. The first time the Russians were able to, I think, at least get it running again, but it looks like they've hit it pretty solidly this time.
Russian gas roasting on an open fire. Putin throwing you out the door or the window, whichever one works. But we can see it's roasting quite nicely. The Inertia pumping station is about to be a gotcha pumping station because it'll be gone, and the Ukrainians will have got them.
And this is the pipeline that carries pretty much all of the gas, I believe, to Europe, correct?
Yes.
And it's all through this one pipeline.
Well, it used to be through several, but this is the last one that's operational or it hasn't been closed off.
Yes, that's a big loss there. I understand why the Ukrainians are putting so much effort into it. It's probably a worthwhile effort.
Oh, yeah, it is definitely worthwhile. And on top of that, it's not too far away from their borders, so hitting it's pretty easy, actually. Also,
I would hate to have to try to get that under control. Like, that'd be a nightmare to try to put this out.
Man, I think, honestly, the only way they can put it out is kind of like just cutting off the gas somewhere else and just waiting for it to burn out. But from what we know, folks, just to clarify this isn't Russian fuel gas. This is Russian natural gas used in heating and cooking and such things, not used for moving vehicles. So if you're about to say, wait a minute, they're in a gas shortage, but they're pumping gas into Europe, this is not gasoline or diesel. This is natural gas. Totally different. We see that they're looking around the facility, just eyeballing what they're going to hit next. Zelensky right now is watching this feed, and he's going, "We will be doing a second strike later this week. We will be knocking out those silos filled with natural gas."
Meanwhile, the U.S. president having a complete waking up on the different side of the bed this morning. Zelensky, you're not going hard enough on him. Slam the Kremlin. It's like, whoa. It's like, what the hell? We got whiplash again today. Yesterday it was Ukraine needs to calm down and Ukraine needs to stop the war that Ukraine started. Now today it's slam Moscow, slam the Kremlin. It's like, whoa, Jack. It's like, could we get a little bit of stability here? I mean, please.
48 hours ago. We have to stop the killing. The killing is terrible. Many people are dying. It's absolutely horrendous. Today, not enough people are dying. Zelensky, you got to get out there and kill a couple of more. Like, it's like, dang, okay, that's a change. Like, that's a big change. Didn't expect that one happening that quick. But moving on from that and through the rest of the Russian Federation, we did also get to see that the more Ukrainian drones were striking targets inside of the Voronezh and Rostov regions. All of these clips are amalgamated, stuttering right there, from the Voronezh and Rostov oblasts, which we can see in this clip right here.
Other like the calm ambience of a Russian working family at night, sitting here bundled up by the fire, looking at a fire in their town.
It's really nice to see a nice open fire, a long-lasting fire. You know that you will stay warm through the winter months.
You know, when they said chestnuts roasting on an open fire, they didn't mean like roasting on an open inferno. I mean, damn.
Damn, son, where'd you find this? I would like some of this and some of that and some of that over here. And also, we got to see the drone attack pads themselves. Take a look at those. Whoa, holy moly. And we also got to see further down here that Novoshitinsk is still on fire. It's roasting. Everything's roasting in Russia for the most part these days. I feel like one of their most favorite types of snacks is anything roasted on an oil fire. But moving on out of that, and on out of the area of Novoshitinsk, we also get to see another little strike that the Ukrainians whipped out today. This was a real fun one. So y'all remember that fuel train that got hit just outside of Tokmak, right near the Ukrainian front lines? So the Ukrainians decided that the best thing to do would be to create a sequel but inside of Crimea. So they hit a fuel train down here, and we got to see some of the fires that resulted from that little hit. Oh, a doctor! This is from Dijon.
Look, though. Look, you're about to see it. Look, Russian fire department in 3, 2, 1. There they are right there. They're actually out there, believe it or not. That's the first time I've ever seen a rapid response from a Russian fire department, I think, in the entire course of the war.
I think it's literally probably because it was next door to the fire department. We can also see the train on fire here.
Oh, the lubricants.
Oh, not the lube. Oh, no. Bro, that shit blew up, dude. That right there, man, is what made Diddy collapse to the floor and go, no! Like, it was that explosion that happened right here.
Seriously, though, this is bad. I mean, that's literally the gas that Russia needs. That is literally it right there. That's burning up for the second time in this, like just a few days. A train getting hit.
Oh, it's just the saddest thing. Oh, it's terrible. Look at it. The train's on fire and everything. Another train passing it on the main. Oh, pitiful stuff. Absolutely pitiful. But I gotta tell y'all, it is what it is for the Russians. You know, they've been running their mouth a lot, and it looks like the Ukrainians are going to humble them by making sure that they don't even have an electrical grid here probably within a couple of months to run their mouths on anymore. So we'll see how that goes, but I think it's going to go well. Oh, hey, by the way, I also have to tell y'all that Azerbaijan is now getting ready for war because the president of Azerbaijan today, I don't know what this picture is. This picture has a weird feel about it, but the president of Azerbaijan declared that the country must always be ready for war. He warned that any provocation against Azerbaijan would have serious consequences for its adversaries, and emphasized that the nation now lives as a victorious state. He added that the army is acquiring new drones, artillery, and modernizing combat aircraft, as well as signing contracts for additional equipment supplies. I don't know why, though. This comes off as almost like a Twitch stream that he's doing right here with, like, the whole background and everything.
Man, I'm not gonna lie, his wife over there is like straight up like gangster life over there, like with those shades on and stuff like that. She's got a serious look. Also, why is that guy look like a Mr. Doodle character or something? You know those little things where you used to like use the little magnet to drag like that magnetic dust over and make the Mr. Doodle man and stuff like that? He looks like that.
He kind of does, but honestly, he's an interesting looking guy. Like, let's see here. Azerbaijan. Here we are. I always forget his name. He's interesting looking.
He's picking a fight with Putin though, so he's interesting in a good way, I would say at this point.
The most interesting man in in the Caucasus Mountains. He's better than Kadyrov at least. Kadyrov going around, I look like ham and cheddar at dawn. Like, I'm dying dawn. I'm on my stupid bike dawn. But nevertheless, a lot of people have been talking about the ongoing situations in the Middle East with the Islamic Republic of Iran. And are they ready for war or are they not? Matthew, what are people thinking about that? What are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so let's round out our Iran news because we got to return to it for just a second to cover this question. And it says that Iran conducted a large-scale naval and ballistic missile test today. They even closed their airspace for a short while, redirecting flights elsewhere. And is war imminent? So 36% said no, and 37% said yes, and 20% were about 50-50. So everybody was all over the place in this one. Nobody's really sure what Iran is trying to do here, but based on what Iran is saying, if you can take them at their word, they are hell-bent on going to war with Israel again, and allegedly they've been supplied by China and also Russia with new weapons and munitions, and they've been resupplied and restocked since the 12-day war. So if that is indeed true and they've properly been restocked, which there has been evidence of Russian flights going to Iran and also Chinese flights going to Iran, then they could be actually prepped for another go at Israel, but I suspect it'll probably go the same way it did last time unless something's changed dramatically. So war is probably imminent, but I don't know when it's going to pop off again. We could be looking at a month or 2 months, but I'd probably say no longer than 6 more months. Like we're probably looking at it in probably a month or two. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that the Iranians are most likely just practicing. I would say that they're not necessarily ready for war because technically they were ready for war the last time. They literally had decades of peacetime to prepare, and they absolutely got beat. So I don't really think they're going to be that well off this time. Like, technically, on paper, maybe they resupply, but them being full of supplies last time only resulted in better fireworks shows in Iran. It didn't actually result in them being able to defend themselves. So I have a feeling that they're most likely just practicing to look like they're scary, but generally everyone in the region, including the United States, knows the Iranians are a joke, and we can take them on with a hand tied behind our back at this point, in my opinion. So with that, I hope that does address it the best we can, at least about the Islamic Republic of Iran. And with that, it's time for us to get on into the rest of the news coming out of Ukraine. Moving on into Ukraine, we were able to hear that Zelensky has given his take today. Zelensky said Russian overnight attacks show Moscow is trying to avoid meetings aimed at ending the war. We also were able to see what that overnight attack looked like in the air defense report. 614 drones and missiles were fired in one night. 546 drones were shot down. One Kinzhal was shot down. One Kinzhal hypersonic, technically. 18 X-101s were also shot down, and 12 Kalibrs were shot down as well. So 577 of the 614 drones and missiles fired in Ukraine were successfully intercepted and shot down by Ukrainian air defense overnight. I'll be honest with you all, these sorts of interception figures, from what we can tell, are accurate. And what's even more shocking about that is that these interception rates are better than most interception rates that the Israelis were able to get against the Iranians in the 12-day war, which is a really shocking kind of a thing. But beyond that, still very impressive the Ukrainians were able to shoot down the large majority of the incoming drones and missiles, although they were not able to get any of the 5 Kalibrs that ended up hitting the factory in Mukachevo. Nevertheless, we are moving on into our location unknowns, which there were a lot of today. First off, we were able to see a Ukrainian missile factory, or more so a long-range drone that is inspired off of the Storm Shadow. These are pretty cool. And they have a lot of them.
Those are large too. I mean, those are actually very large. And when you see a person standing next to it, it's also got that like traditional Bayraktar design to the tail fins. That's kind of unique.
Yeah, the Liudi also has those too. I think the Ukrainians got the Bayraktar and they were like, wow, this is like kind of cool. And like they just started putting that on everything. It works though, so I guess it is pretty neat looking. But outside of that, we also got to see the Flamingo a little bit more today, folks. Look at this beast. This thing is massive.
That is massive, honestly. It looks like a homemade creation almost, with the way they like put that jet engine on top of it like that. But if it works, it works. But what's crazy to me is they've already put this thing into mass production. When they announced it, it was already in production, which is crazy. So this should get fielded very, very soon. I'm not sure exactly when, but should be pretty soon.
Actually, honestly, man, you know what it looks like to me? It kind of looks like a Global Hawk without the wings, like with how the engine is sat on top of it. Similar in
Yeah,
style a little bit. But still pretty neat, and it's pretty cool. Also, by the way, to give you all an idea of scale, a Tomahawk cruise missile carries a 1,000-pound warhead, which is about 1,000 pounds less than the warhead that this missile carries, and that's about the average size of a Tomahawk. That's actually the cell that carries the Tomahawk cruise missile that you're looking at right here. So that's how big a Tomahawk is compared to your average person, and that's how big the Flamingo is. So the Flamingo is like a Tomahawk that's on roid rage. But outside of that, we also got to see a clip, or a video more so, from the factory right here showing us these flamingos in production. Excuse the thumbnail. Well, not the thumbnail, sorry, the watermarks, but let's get into the clip.
Also, to show images.
Oh, well, we can see here the cruise missile. Take a look at that. Look at that. They already have an assembly line of these things on trailers, mind you, to be able to move them to wherever they need to go. These things are just absolute giants and really impressive stuff. I got to tell you, folks, I absolutely think the Flamingo is the way of the future for Ukraine. And we'll have to see once they're actually being used. So far, we cannot confirm that they were used, and it appears that the Novoshatinsk attack was not a Flamingo. So we're still waiting to see one of these used against the Russians. But once they start to get used, I think they're going to start having a pretty big impact. We also got to see some pics that went hard from the 82nd Separate Air Assault Brigade. These were some really cool pictures. I was just like, dang, these go hard. So I had to show them to y'all.
Those do go hard right there. I love that. Nighttime pictures go hard.
They're always cool. Also, we got to see some Russians being taken prisoner. We hear the FPV overhead.
Небо закрийте, будь ласка.
We hear some more caps being popped.
До мене! І до мене бігом!
And here comes a Russian. He's surrendering.
Ляг. Де ще один? Хлопці, давайте ви забрали, поки чоловіки розійшлись. Де ще один? Забери двойку, я тройку. Вася, тільки бістріше. Ви два, три. Зі мною. Все, пішли. Рухаємося вперед. Тримай на плече. Йдеш переді мною. Розворот. Руки за голову. Другу руку за голову. Пішов. Плюс, по роботі 4-5-0.
And that's the end of the clip, but still great to see. Moving on from that and on into our next clip, we also got to see a new gun drone being introduced by the Ukrainians.
Those are so cool right there. That is really crazy. They just put a machine gun on top of a drone little carrier like that.
Okay, that outro actually kind of scared me there. I was about to say, yeah, I was thinking we were going to watch it a little bit longer, and then went, boom, shit. I was like, what the hell? Like, but those things are really neat. They have, I think, about 15 different variants of this thing in service right now, but these things are just absolutely the tops. I mean, think about it. You get to lay down light machine gun fire without having to expose anyone into the open to fire it. I mean, that's just amazing in its own right, and these things are cheap, so that's a win-win all around. But moving on from that and on into the casualty report today was something. Oh, look at that.
Oh, look, they got a Bobcat today. That's very nice. Big day, big Bobcat. I tell you what, they're stacking them up. They're only about, let's see, 56 away from actually hitting 4,000. So that at the rate they're taking out Bobcats now, it could be like 6 months to a year before they hit that. But we'll get there.
I would have to say, I think it's not going to hit 4,000 before the end of the war. I think the war's going to end before it hits 4,000. But Miss DC Keeper the record said 315 drones is the second highest daily loss. Lowest troop loss since April of 2025. Artillery and vehicles slightly below average. And we were able to see that 830 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 5 APCs, 114 supply trucks, 1 main battle tank, 41 artillery pieces, 315 drones, 1 MLRS, 1 anti-aircraft warfare system, and 1 Bobcat skid steer. It was a pretty decent day overall. And now, moving on into the front, we were able to see near to the Kupiansk area, the Ukrainians were destroying more Russian equipment. Okay, we'll mute that. I was trying to mute that, and then I unmuted it while I was trying to enlarge the screen. But we can see them hitting a Russian artillery piece. That, in Ukrainian, is called the garmata. Say it with me, folks. Garmata. That's an artillery piece in Ukrainian.
You sound like that guy on Inglourious Bastard trying to go, Antonio Margaret.
Man, dude, I was actually feeling like I was about to turn into Dora. I was like, "Como se dice artillery?" Like Garmata, you know, something like that. But anyways, when you see them continuing to hit them, I get to tell you, the Ukrainians are hitting the Russians worse than a bad drunk uncle. But moving on from that, we also got to see the Scala unit targeting and hitting Russian forces in the 425th. Oh, is that a pickup Buhanka? Ew! Oh my god! That thing deserved to be blown up.
I cannot stand any type of vehicle. It's like a half car, half pickup, half SUV type deal. Those are so hideous. I'm sorry if you have one, but I mean, they're not it. The design, I don't know who came up with it, but they should probably go find a new career. I mean, I just don't like it. Like, that Honda Ridgeline thing? It's like a
Yeah.
half like SUV, half pickup truck.
Ugh.
I don't like it.
You know what I don't like is when they took the Jeep Wrangler and they added the pickup flatbed to it.
Oh, yeah, the Gladiator. Oh,
Yeah.
God. Now, I'm
Bro,
not hating on people who have gladiators, by the way. I know somebody in the chat. I actually know a person that has a gladiator. So if you got one, I mean, good on you. But I just don't like the design.
I I just gotta be honest with y'all. A pickup's a pickup. Nothing should have a pickup flatbed on it if it's not designed in purpose as a pickup.
And also calling it a gladiator. I mean, we went from Wrangler to Gladiator. It's like, how the hell, how's that work?
Well, actually, a lot of Jeep's products usually had some sort of a Roman reference, like the Rubicon, those sorts of vehicles. But Gladiator, it's like, couldn't they have called it like the Tiber or something like that? The Jeep Tiber, like after another river, there's the Tiber, the Rubicon, yada yada, so on and so forth. They're Italian rivers, so it kind of makes sense. But instead, they went with Gladiator.
Yeah, I don't get it.
Yeah,
But in the meantime, though, look at these gladiators out here on the battlefield, these Ukrainians. I'll tell you what, they're out here acting like it's the Colosseum.
I don't think they had drones in the Coliseum. Like, I don't know. I don't know. But they are
If
hidden.
they had the Colosseum today, they would definitely have drones in it, I can assure you.
Dude, how in the world would a gladiator even fight a drone? Would they just have like a net and keep throwing the net at the drone until they took it out? Or I don't know. That's a good question.
Something like that.
Well, anyways, that's the end of the clip right there. And moving on from that and further down the line and into the area of Chasiv Yar, we also got to see some of the fighting being conducted by the 18th Brigade in this area. The music goes hard. We will not play it for copyright, but we can see them moving through the trees. Oh, now they're lighting them up. Oh, they're literally lighting them up with a flashlight on strobe.
I don't think that really works in the daytime, but it's a good attempt.
Well, it's a little hidey hole they're in, so it's dark in there. Man, that's getting to
That's
me.
a seizure-inducing thing right there. I gotta like cover that up or something.
Yeah, gee, I'm gonna skip past that actually, folks. They destroyed the dugout later on. And also, Richard Philpott said, Rubicon's a trail in California, I thought. Well, actually, I believe the Jeep Rubicon was named after the Rubicon River, as in the one that Caesar crossed. When they said, do not cross the Rubicon or it will be war, and then he crossed the Rubicon. I think it's named after that Rubicon, if I'm not mistaken. I might be wrong. But that's the end of that clip. Nice to see the 18th Brigade hard at work. Moving on down to Touretsk, we also get to see the Ukrainians taking a couple of shots of the Russians in the 100th Mechanized Brigade here around the city of Touretsk.
Somebody left their rifle unattended next to their helmet. That's different. That's definitely a Russian thing.
So actually, I am wrong. I'm actually wrong, Richard Philpott. I had to go pull it up really quickly. It's not named after the Rubicon River. It's named after the Rubicon Trail. So you are correct, actually. I was mistaken.
Uh-oh, we got a Russian making getaway on the four-wheeler.
I don't think he got away. I think he tried to make a getaway. I think that was what
that
was
drone's
called...
going fast, too, to pick up on a four-wheeler like that. That thing's booking it. This drone's, like, speeding up on it like it was sitting still. Oh, they drove straight into it. How goofy. They literally had it lit up with the headlights.
Man, goofiness to the extreme. Oh, wow, this building is going through the works. The Ukrainians are going to put it through a little extra work. Oh, there was actually a hidden dirt bike in there. What do you know? A little sneaky Russian, eh? A little sneaky. But we also got to see the Road of Death near Seladove. Take a look at this. This is a montage of all the vehicles that have been destroyed along this Road of Death heading to Seladove, which is near to the area of the Pokrovsk front.
I remember we saw a side angle of this from a soldier standing on the side of the road, like a couple of yards away, and you could see this, but man, it looks crazier when you're on the road.
Yeah, and this is a sped up montage of all the destroyed vehicles. It's insane how many of them are still sitting on the side of the roads. Also, even in sped up, you can see how this Bavahanka is like leaning into every single turn. Like it takes a right turn and the whole thing starts leaning to the left.
It's got that crappy suspension. It's got that like busted suspension.
Man, it's got that leaf spring suspension. I think this thing actually does have leaf springs, though.
Not known for its cornering capabilities, but it is a Scooby van.
So there were so many destroyed vehicles back there, they literally had to make a detour around them in the road.
I don't even know what the hell some of these vehicles are. What are these things, like abominations? Like I can't even tell what some of these things even were to begin with.
Some of these things, Matthew, were once in our road section. Now they are just scrap on the side of the road. It's a shame. A lot of those relics of the Rodnik section are gone now. They've been blown up. But we also got to see more Russians getting hit out here by the Chernova Kalina of the First Corps. Oh, look at that. Is that a grad? Is that a grad, folks? Oh, they're about to get it. Get him, boys! And there they go. They're going to get him. Bada bing, bada boom. And there goes the grab.
Oh my god. That wasn't edited or anything? That was the actual explosion?
That was the actual explosion.
Damn.
They
like shook the camera. Go back for a second. Let's see that one more time. That like shook the whole like drone and everything.
They had 40 high explosive 122 millimeter rockets in this thing when it was hit. That's why it blew up like that. Oh.
Look at that. That is insane, man. It literally shook the drone with a gimbal on it. That's wild. That shockwave was crazy.
Man, the firepower. Cooked, even, I would say. Well done, possibly. Man. That's one hell of an outro. Dang, bro.
It's a little too much. A little too much. I'm not going to lie. Like, their outros are getting like a little over the top.
Bro, the video editor said, oh, what type of outro do you like? And someone in the First Corps said, I want it to look like you're tripping acid. And then this is what they came up with. Oh, my God. That was insane.
I want it to be like Skittles on the way out. Every color of the rainbow. And make it flash in front of their face where their eyeballs say, ah!
Dude, that had the same like edit style to that one meme that you showed me where I was like, oh, I can't wait to grow up. Hopefully things will be stable and the future will be bright. And then it was like that early warning alert siren thing that, and then bomb the shit out of them. And so it's like showing all that stuff on the screen. That was the same like editing style. But we also got to hear earlier today, folks, that the Ukrainians have started a new counteroffensive operation to the south of Bakrovsk. And we have been able to hear, although we have not been able to see the absolute scope of this counteroffensive so far, that the Ukrainian armed forces have liberated 6 settlements in the Покровsk direction already today as a part of this counteroffensive. So it does appear that the counteroffensive is successful at the moment, but it will most likely be about another day or two until we get the exact details of what villages have been liberated and how far the Russians were pushed back. But moving on out of the Покровsk front and further on down and into the Zaporizhia region, we also were able to hear that the Ukrainians have retaken some ground at Andriivka Klistove, which is great to hear. We also got to hear further on down near Balohi that the Russians were getting hit by Ukrainian airstrikes. The Ukrainians are really getting quite fond of the airstrikes. They're almost becoming like the United States.
The Ukrainians really do have that iron in them. Today,
man, you've been stuck on that.
Today, it's a mudflat, but it is a modern city. Tomorrow, it'll be razed to the ground.
Man, when I first came here, it was a city. Now, it is a mudflat. Tomorrow, it'll be rubble. But moving on out of that, and on down into Odessa. Supposedly, an Iris-T system got destroyed down here. And I don't know why they were playing country music over it. Like, that, believe it or not, was country music when I listened to the actual clip unmuted earlier. But they're claiming that this was an Iris-T system that got hit by a cruise missile. I'm doubting it because usually an Iris-T would move from day to day, but it may have happened. And that is one significant explosion. It is coming out of Odessa, at least at the moment, from what we could see on film. But it's unclear as to whether or not that would be an Iris-T.
Saw a little bit of air defense at work over there in the corner. Can't believe it.
You know, Matthew, I don't think this was an Iris-T. I think it might have been an Ice-T.
Could have been.
Well, with that, it is time for us to move on out of Odessa and on up into Kyiv. to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky. We finally have one. We
Oh,
finally
yes,
have one.
speech.
And it is 5 minutes and 23 seconds long. So, without further ado, here's the speech. Speech!
Speech!
Бажаю здоров'я. Сьогодні весь день в частині наших областей тривали роботи після російської нічної атаки. Масована атака. Більше 500 дронів було, 574 були і ракети, зокрема балістика. 40 ракет. Значну частину всього цього наші воїни збили. І важливо, що є така у нас можливість. Є у нас такі відповідні засоби. Більше 30 ракет ми збили, десятки шахедів знищені нашими перехоплювачами. Дякую всім розробникам та операторам. Але, на жаль, були і влучання. Різні області, від Запоріжжя до Волинської області та Закарпаття, в Мукачеві росіяни фактично спалили підприємство, до речі, американське підприємство виробника електротехніки, і це побутові електроприлади, нічого воєнного. Росіяни точно знали, куди б'ють. Це був ракетний удар. Ми вважаємо, це був цілеспрямований удар саме по американській власності тут, в Україні, по американських інвестиціях. Дуже показовий удар. Як і вся ця масована атака. Якраз коли світ очікує від росіян чіткої відповіді щодо перемовин про закінчення війни. Є два формати, в яких реально досягти прогресу. І це формати на рівні лідерів, двосторонній формат Україна та Росія і тристоронній Україна, Сполучені Штати, Росія. Ми обговорювали це у Вашингтоні. Путін говорив про це на дзвінку президенту Трампу. Зараз сигнали з Росії просто, якщо чесно, непристойні. Вони намагаються зіскочити з необхідності проводити зустріч. Вони не хочуть закінчувати цю війну. Вони продовжують масовані атаки проти України та дуже жорсткі штурми на фронті. І ще й запускають ракети по американському підприємству, як і по багатьом іншим абсолютно цивільним нашим мішень. Причому зовсім поруч з кордонами Євросоюзу і НАТО російський ударний дрон залетів на територію Польщі. Дуже неприємні інциденти з дронами були і на території Литви. Це все не є чимось, знаєте, випадковим, це наглість росіян. Розраховуємо, що реакція партнерів буде принциповою. Цю війну треба завершувати, треба тиснути на Росію, щоб війна завершилась. Нічого, крім сили, тиску, Путін не розуміє. Звісно, ми робимо і будемо робити все необхідне, щоб захистити нашу державу і захистити наших людей. Президент Сполучених Штатів Америки абсолютно правильно говорить, не тільки в обороні це треба робити, але водночас не зменшуємо зусиль в дипломатії, в усіх наших контактах з партнерами, щоб все ж відбулись перемовини, і саме такі, які можуть наблизити мир. Працюють радники з питань національної безпеки. Вчора була у них розмова, сьогодні теж багато комунікації на своєму рівні військові, головком, Генеральний штаб працюють над воєнною компонентою гарантій безпеки України. Зараз кожен день додає контурів майбутньої безпекової архітектури для України. Зброя, фінансування, взаємодія з нашими партнерами, сили на землі, в повітрі, на морі. І щодня будуть нові кроки партнерів на підтримку України. У мене буде багато дипломатичної роботи. Я дякую всім, хто з нами, хто з Україною. І ще одне. Я хочу сьогодні подякувати всім працівникам ДСНС України, всім, хто завжди допомагає людям після російських ударів. Важливо, що українці, попри все, вміють захистити життя, допомагають всім, хто поруч. ДСНС, поліція, всі наші служби, багато волонтерів, медичні працівники, екстренка, всі максимально функціональні та ефективні. Дякуємо вам. Особливо відзначу сьогодні Харківщину, Головне управління ДСНС України у Харківській області. Василь Зайкан, Антон Журавльов, Леонід Жупій, Андрій Сімцов, Олександр Бондаренко. Дякую вам, хлопці. Також працівникам мобільного рятувального центру швидкого реагування ДСНС України. Юрій Желага, Костянтин Сілаєв, Віталій Машковський, Марія Кукла. Дякую. Дякую. І також Головне управління ДСНС України у місті Києві. Юрій Лозинський, Микола Лось, Борис Іванченко, Ігор Лисак, Вадим Ярошевський, Андрій Омельченко. Дякую, хлопці. Дякую всім, хто воює та хто працює заради України. Слава Україні!
And
Heroam Slava.
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine here on day 1,275 of the war. And that is time for us to move on into the second segment of this stream. The first time we've ever been able to do a normal transition on this show in about a week into the second question segment, where we get to talk to each and every one of y'all. And boy, howdy, folks, what a fun time it is. We get to talk about literally anything and everything except for religion, politics, global warming, or whether the A-10 is relevant in modern warfare. Outside of that, however, everything is on the table. We can talk about it all, and anything for that matter. What would y'all like to talk about tonight? Maybe we'll get to some super chats that have some interesting topics in them, or questions for that matter, or some live chats that also dig deep into the questions at large. Like, is pasta technically some sort of a bread because it's made out of grains, or is it some sort of a soup of a sense? I'm just kidding. I don't even know where the hell I was going with that one. I was trying to come up with one of those food things. You know what I'm talking about, Matthew? Where they're like, is a Pop-Tart a pastry, or is it something else, or something along those lines? But
Oh, yeah,
anyway.
clickbait.
Yeah, absolutely. Clickbait. Lots of clickbait. We love clickbait here. We love clickbait, Jerry. But anyways,
Clip
is
it.
a what?
Clip it.
Clip it, folks, and start like a whole thing. Oh, the enforcer said he loved clickbait. Do it. I would love to see it. I would get a laugh out of it. But nevertheless, it is time for us to move on into all of the giant things that we can talk about tonight here in this question segment. Before we get on into all of those giant topics that we can talk about, as they say in China, every 50,000-mile journey begins with one single step. And so with that in mind, it is time for us to get on into a poll that we've thrown up for all of y'all. We didn't actually upchuck it. It just was put up in the live chat, and that was a very weird way for me to put it. But Matthew, what are people saying about that poll, and what are you saying about it as well?
All right, so Ukraine has shown us through video evidence they've begun mass manufacturing the new Flamingo cruise missile with a massive range on it. And is it going to change the war? And the old term that we love to use, will it be a game changer? So 42% said 100% it will change the course of the war in Ukraine's favor, while 33% said it will just be a neat new weapon, and 18% said it will be somewhat but only minor. And I would say that if Ukraine can develop enough of these in large enough numbers, this will change the course of the war without a doubt, because it carries a massive payload on it, much larger than their other missiles. It also has a wildly long range on it, and it can literally strike all of Russia's significant areas in their country. So the Flamingo has the potential to really, truly change the course of the war. That's not just saying it just to say it. It truly can. But the crux of the issue, though, is how many can Ukraine manufacture and how quick can they manufacture them as well. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say the Flamingo can actually change the course of the war by allowing for a larger explosive to be dropped onto a Russian refinery. It ensures that there will be even more damage, and the damage will be harder to repair, meaning that the attacks will be more significant in their impact. So in general, I'd say the Flamingo is going to be causing a lot of problems for the Russians, because also, unlike every other long-range weapon that's been given to Ukraine, which is given to them by a foreign country, and that foreign country can put limitations on what the Ukrainians can hit with it, the Flamingo is entirely domestically made, meaning that the Ukrainians can do whatever they want with it because they made it, and nobody else can tell them what to do with it. So, that'll be pretty interesting in its own right. What will they do with it? The answer is limitless. Fill in the blank, folks. But anyways, beyond that, I also have to say, really quickly, a big, massive thanks to everyone who has been watching our shows in recent days, because it's something to note, folks, and I don't think Enforcer Matt and me really appreciate this anymore, but every once in a while I have to bring it up to all of y'all, because I have to tell y'all about it, and I have to tell y'all that we really do appreciate it. We are one of the largest voices in news on the internet these days, especially on YouTube, because here in the United States of America, every single day on Playboard, the ratings come out, and the ratings always say where in the world the Enforcer channel landed. We always, when we're on air, except for one time recently, are in the top 100 somewhere. And so if we go through this chart, it's crazy, just to show y'all this. that there was one political commentator that kind of hit it big for once, kind of shocking. There also was one news channel that was in Spanish that made it to number 11. There was, let's see, from what I can tell, no other news channels above us rather than that one that was at number 11. We were at number 52 in America yesterday with only 11,200 viewers at the peak. I've got to say that we never really think about that anymore here on the channel, about how large the channel has gotten and how many people are watching it every single night. But I do want to let y'all all know that I wish we could speak and thank each and every one of y'all in the tens of thousands who watch this channel every single night, because it really is something to think that we are in the position that we were telling most people on the internet who are listening to the news about what's going on out there practically every single night. I've got to say a massive thanks to all of y'all. We actually had more viewers than that tonight. We actually got up to a peak viewership of 15.5 thousand people, and so far I've had 107,000 people watch this stream in 2 hours, meaning that if we were to land in yesterday's ratings at that kind of a number, we would have been up near the top 30s. And it's a little bit crazy that we're almost always in the top 50s in America these days off of the kind of viewership that we get. But I always want to let y'all know that we are massively thankful and appreciative to each and every one of y'all who has stuck with us through the years, and all the people who are finding us right now and starting to stick with us, hopefully for the remainder of the years that we'll be on air, because it lets us know that what we are saying isn't bogus, because you don't make it into the top 50s in America speaking absolute dog water. So a big thanks to all of y'all so much for watching still, and if y'all are enjoying right now and are new to the channel, please make sure to subscribe. But we would love to have y'all join us. We're getting really close to hitting 485,000 subscribers. We're only about 500 away at this point, and we would love to know that we are getting closer and closer to the 500,000 mark. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best we can, at least at the moment. And with that, we are on to the next one.
I tell you what, to hit those rankings every night, you gotta have that iron in you. I tell you what, honestly,
Good Lord.
that guy's words have like stuck in my head like so much. If y'all don't know who I'm quoting with that, it's Lee Kuan Yew. He's one of the founding fathers of Singapore. I saw this edit today, which really inspired me. I was like, I need to make a U.S. edit with like some U.S. Like military men speaking and show the military might of the U.S. That would be some good U.S. propaganda, honestly. They had some good videos out on that guy, talking about they got to have that iron in them in Singapore and stuff like that. I thought it was pretty cool, me personally. So, I don't know. Might have to come up with like a neat little, not a propaganda video. We're not trying to make propaganda, but maybe a hype reel for the United States military. That might be pretty cool.
I unapologetically produce American propaganda. The whole intro to the show is really just American propaganda. But I'm totally fine with it. I'm completely fine with being a patriot and a propagandist, because why in the world not be proud of the country? I wouldn't know. You know, like there's always some idiot out there on TikTok somewhere who saw the Chinese light up a skyscraper with some LEDs, and they talk about how China's living 50 years in the future because they have LEDs all over a skyscraper. So why in the world not make a propaganda reel about the United States just to counter that sort of stupidity? Why not? I think that's a pretty good thing. So, you know, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. You know, like I'm totally fine with creating propaganda. Why hide from it? Yeah, we create propaganda. What about it? Oh man. But anyway,
It's not really propaganda though. Is we don't like get like too much on one side. Like when somebody does something, like let's say, like typically we usually support Israel, like usually on the channel. But if Israel does something that's obviously wrong, like we usually call it out. Like unless it's something that's minor, we won't maybe call it out. But if it's something serious, we'll say, hey, we don't know about that. Like we don't make any bones about that. Also, if Ukraine does something, like for example, the Russians claim that Ukraine sent a drone into a residential building, we will actually analyze it to see if that's the case without just saying, oh, whatever Ukraine does is fine. Like we are objective still. Like we're not like, me personally, I don't classify it as propaganda. I say we're still pretty fair.
Oh, I'm just kidding around. We're not propaganda. Like we stay fair, and we'll sit there and say, "Hey, wait a minute, the president's decision here doesn't really look that good," or "It's good." You know, when it's good, it's good. When it's bad, it's not. You know, all that sort of a deal. When the Ukrainians do something that looks like it might be kind of questionable, we bring it up. When the Israelis do something that looks kind of questionable, we bring it up. We do that all the time. But one thing that I do have to say though is a lot of people don't get this. And this is something that I do have to say. We are as impartial in our news coverage as we can be. However, we are also American citizens. So, generally from how I view things, because I'm not really one of these new wave, like right wing or left wing people who say they love the country, but that's honestly just code speak for they hate the entire thing, how it exists right now, and they want to turn it into some sort of an authoritarian state that only supports their beliefs. I'm not one of those people. I actually do like the country. Like, it has issues and it has some problems here and there, and I know, like, all the problems as well that everyone says from all ends, but I still really love the country for what it is and appreciate it. So when we cover news, we're obviously not going to sit there and go, let's give the Russians a fair pedestal. Maybe the Russians do have a point in the war in Ukraine. Nah, if you're into that kind of silliness, you can go to Tucker Carlson, because if this was World War II, would y'all be expecting me to go, maybe Hitler does have a point? Like, no, absolutely not. I would never say that. That is just inherently un-American to sit there and say that the enemies of the nation have a point. Like, they don't, because their point is against ours. So why in the world would I ever say, oh, let me go and promote their viewpoint that inherently is destructive to our way of life and will also not improve our quality of living or standard of living in any measurable way? That makes no sense. Like, that makes absolutely no sense. I'm totally for being as impartial as possible, but at the same time, I'm an American. So if I'm going to be covering news, any enemy of the Republic, like the Russians, the Chinese, the North Koreans, Iran, so on and so forth, the Indians for that matter, that say, oh, like, we're doing this and it's to America's detriment, but here's our speaking point as to why that's a good thing. I'm not going to be a traitor to my country and sit there and say, oh, you know what, that's actually going to hurt our nation, but I actually agree with the people who are trying to hurt my nation and me. That's just stupid. Like, that is absolutely stupid. Never will happen. And to the folk, like, I'll just say this, folks. Like, I'll make this blanket statement, kind of like an unrestricted submarine warfare statement. Anyone on the internet who says that they love the country, and then on the flip side, right after they say that, they agree with a standpoint of an enemy nation that puts America at an inherent disadvantage, I view them as generally being borderline treasonous or a sympathizer with treasonous philosophies. Because you can't sit there and say you love the country to the point that you would sell us out to our enemies just because of some minor notion in America. Like, oh, I hear this one so much. Someone from the countryside, you know how people usually politically lean to the countryside. Oh, those city folks, I don't really like them and what their morals are, so I'm going to side with the Russians. And then city folks go, oh, those country people, they're so stupid and backwards. I don't side with them at all. I'd side with the Chinese to screw them over. That is just absolutely treasonous from both metrics. It's like, that's not your enemy. The people you're teaming up with is everyone's enemy. The countryside guy and the city folk. That's our enemy. Is the enemy nations. It's not your fellow countrymen, whether they're from the city or the countryside. That's just not the case. And I don't know why in the world people think like that.
You know what's wild though is I do agree, like, the country should be much more united than it is, but even in its divided state where we're so partisan and so divided, we still in that state could go around the world and strike fear in every single one of our enemies. We could still whoop every single one of our adversaries' asses with our hands tied behind our backs without a second thought. And that's the truth of it. Now, China, maybe another story. China might be a little bit closer to a level playing field, but it's not because they have like some magic equation or something that makes it that way. It's because they manufacture stuff in large quantities and they can also replenish their weapon stocks really quick. But the U.S. still strikes fear in the enemies, and everybody still respects the United States. No matter what crazy stuff comes out of the politician's mouth, everybody knows at the end of the day, don't screw with the United States because they're still the biggest.
I would have to agree. And I also saw Kuva saying, that doesn't mean occasionally your enemies can't have good points. It would be ignorance to believe that also can't be true. To a degree, but those same points could be found in an allied country. Like, for example, let's say in World War II, Germany was the pioneer of the Autobahn. Or generally a state-constructed paved highway network is basically what the Autobahn is. Britain also was doing that at the same time with the motorways. Like, Germany wasn't really the first. Well, Germany was technically the first, but they weren't really, like, beating everyone to the punch. Because everyone kind of already had a theory at that point that a nationalized constructed road network that was able to interconnect anything anywhere by the roadways was going to be efficient for future logistical concerns. Everyone knew that, especially in America. I mean, already in America by the mid-20s, in the 1920s, American trucking was already starting to catch on as a pretty big logistical supply chain, and everyone started to go, hey, it'd actually be better for the logistics of the trucking companies to have a nationalized road network like the interstates or something along those lines, like an Autobahn, so that the Germans were the first to pave one and actually make it exist, but the theory had existed already for a couple of decades before they even paved the first Autobahn in Germany. And so, those sorts of kinds of things where people go, oh, yes, but our enemies have points. Usually, most of the time, they really don't have any points, especially when you get down into their philosophy. Like, for example, with the communists, one big thing that they say is that the only way for a truly fair society to exist is to collectivize farming and have it run by the state and to distribute all the food fairly and to make sure that there's no profit incentive in it at all. And you will always see statistically that collectivized farming in terms of yields, it does about 80% less in yields than non-collectivized private farming does on private plots. Never at all competitive. The Nazis, for example, said, for the state to ensure the purity of the Germans, we have to nationalize everything so that way nobody from the outside can run German affairs. A German government for the German people running German industry. It was abysmally terrible. Like, the autarky principle, which that was an extension of, was an absolutely terrible economic philosophy. Like, as far as the things that we took from the Nazi Germans or the Imperial Japanese, was generally only in terms of scientific, technological breakthroughs that they made, which for the Japanese generally came from Unit 731 and the atrocities they conducted against people in the experiments of that unit. That was really the only thing we learned scientifically from the Japanese, was things like the body's made of about 70-something% water. And don't even ask how they found that out. And then with the Germans, we found out from them a little bit additional about rocketry, but it wasn't anything major that we weren't already going to be a couple of years away from learning. So, on stuff like that, yeah, there is something to learn from our enemies here and there, but at least on the social side of things, not really much. Because a lot of the things that the Russians say are problems in their own country, like, look at the Americans overdosing on fentanyl. Well, they just die from drinking vodka. It's almost the same thing, it's like, so is it worse if it's fent or vodka? It's the same result. People are ending up dying from overindulgence and what could be described as vices. So it's like there's really no difference. But beyond that, I hope that does address that at least the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so it's now time to jump into our super chat questions yet again. We got a lot of really good chats tonight with the super chats and the live chat questions, so let's jump right back into them. And our first one here goes to Grim Hades, and he puts in a $100 donation. And thank you very much, by the way, for that massive support. That is the second largest of the night. And Grim said, so we look sad and let the Ruskies look powerful.
If you're talking about the Suwalki Gap situation, kind of, yeah, for now, because we're not really responding. So we let the Russians look like they're pretty much completely, like, it was almost benevolent that they don't take the Suwalki Gap at this point, because there isn't any response to show that they wouldn't be able to take it. So in my opinion, yes, and that's why I keep on advocating on this channel. We have to have a war game at least a third of the size that is happening at the same time their war game is happening on the other side of the border. Just so that way we have the armed forces in the area that are present and armed to be able to defend the Suwalki Gap if they tried an offensive into it. That's what I'm personally thinking. But I do thank you massively for the support, Grim Hades, and helping this channel to keep on running. And that is absolutely massive support. A huge thanks to you for it. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have another super chat from Grim Hades, who throws in yet another $100 donation, by the way, the second one of the night, and a huge shout out to Grim for that support indeed. Very generous. And Grim said, on what I said last is just like we let them do what they want and bomb our place in Ukraine, but we're not doing anything.
Matthew, do you know what that means?
He's basically saying that the West is not really being as strong as they should be. The West is kind of letting Russia do whatever they want, and NATO really never responds to it. Like, for example, I think they're referring to the Poland incident. Like, Poland's response was somewhat on the weak side. Like, all we did was lodge a formal protest, and that was pretty much the end of it. So I think they're taking an issue with that.
I would personally take issue with that as well. I think that the responses from NATO have been incredibly weak, and that we should have a lot more strong and aggressive responses, militaristically speaking, than what we're seeing right now. The responses we're having at the moment are insanely weak, and it's putting us into a position of weakness that further encourages the Russians to take even more hostile and aggressive actions such as that one. So a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and I hope that does address that incredibly well with your massive support, Grim Hades, and thank you greatly once again. And we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here is going to go to Marion Deemer, and Marion Deemer puts in a $30 donation. And thank you very much, Marion, for that support. And
Hey!
also, by the way, a note to Marion. Sadly, we do not control the YouTube censorship. For whatever reason, YouTube strongly censors what people can put in the super chat box. I don't know why that is. I wish we could control that, but that's not something we can control on our end. So sorry about it holding you up for sending that super chat, because a lot of people actually are having that issue these days. I think sometimes YouTube even filters some symbols, like sometimes, at least I've heard people say that. So sorry about that. And also, I think VPNs may mess with it as well, but I'm not really sure. I'm just going off what people have told me. But thank you very much for persevering through that and throwing in that support. And Marion said, Slava Ukraine and Hiram Slava.
And I'd have to say, Slava Ukraini, Huram Slava. And a huge thanks to you for the support, Marion Deemer, and having been with us forever. You were an old guard of the channel and have helped us keep this thing running for years. And I got to thank you massively for continuing to help us to keep this thing running for years and being here with us tonight. And so a massive thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, it is time for us to move on into the next one.
And oh no, we have a super chat about trains. And LC39A generously throws in a 138 Canadian. And thank you very much, good sir, for that support. And we appreciate that very much once again. Massive support. And he said, as a child, I had Lionel trains. What say you?
And
We both had those, by the way. We both have them. I have mine. The one I got actually is like a highly sought after collectible now. I've got it hidden away in storage at this point. It's pretty cool. It's a Union Pacific train. I don't know the model of train, but I used to drive it around a track when I was really young and stuff like that. So I had one or two of those, but not a whole bunch. So I only had like one or two just because I got it for a gift. But yeah, also I do have that one that's in the picture right there. That's the second one I have.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. I thought you said it was Santa Fe, didn't you?
Oh no, Union Pacific is the cargo train I got, and I have this one right here for the passenger train.
Let's see. Lionel Union Pacific. I'm pretty sure it's an SD70 of some type, right? Or an SD60.
I'm not really sure.
Is it this
I
one?
think that's the bigger one. No, it's a bigger one.
So
SD80 or something.
if it was SD80 Mac? Nah, they didn't make one of those. It'd have to be an SD70 of some type, probably. An SD70M, because it wasn't the Ace model. I think it's this one.
It's something like that. I got one that looks similar to that though.
I wish I could find it. But beyond that, I actually had a Lionel of my own, but mine was more of the normal type, which was the Polar Express. I had this one. I liked it, though. I thought it was pretty cool. Lionel, though, like, as far as Lionel goes in terms of quality these days, a lot of people consider Lionel to be on the lower end of quality because a lot of the model railroading stuff has gotten really, really advanced and really complicated, like in terms of the detail that they add in as well as the sound and everything. Because back in the day, Lionel was really working a lot on direct current, and a lot of Lionel's original production, way back in the day especially, was done here in the U.S., which, interestingly enough, if y'all don't know this, America never was able, ever in its history, to actually create incredibly detailed models and also details on them. It just wasn't really possible. Let me go see if I can show y'all a Lionel from, say, the 1960s, when it was all American made. This is the kind of quality that would be seen, which to most people, it would be like, oh, that looks like an F unit, and it does, but there's a lot of details that it's missing, and a lot of them that weren't really made too well. Like, for example, that. Like, as far as the details go, it had to be cast into the mold, or it just didn't exist. There was no way to add it on. So in the 1970s, getting towards the late 1970s, a lot of these model railroad companies started to go to countries like South Korea and Japan because of how their cultures existed. There was a lot of people who were involved in minute detail, painting details on the locomotive, well, not really locomotives, but models of any type, and also making them incredibly detailed, also due to the scene that existed in Japan with the Gundams, all that sort of a deal. There was a huge existing industry that could already do that there. So details on the models got a lot more advanced. And in the present day, especially in the most normal scale you see in model railroading, which is HO scale, I consider this company, I actually will give them like a merciless plug on air, just in case if any of y'all are interested. I give this company the highest marks. Like, their models are the most realistic out of any that I've ever seen. This is scale trains, and they make them insanely good. They are so neat. Like, they actually have these new heavyweight passenger cars coming out here soon, and I just gotta say, these things are just the tops. Look at this, like, really quickly. These are one of my favorite ones right here, number 4047. It is a half primer, half painted AC-44C6M. The details are insane, and what you're looking at right there in the picture, that isn't a picture of a real one. That's a picture of their model. Insanely detailed. So like the model details these days have just gotten absolutely insane. Like to the point that it's quite literally photorealistic. And Lionel still in the modern day just can't really compete with that, even with their manufacturing for most of their locomotives happening inside of the Guangdong province of China. So a little bit sad with that because Lionel's been a pretty reputable name in the model railroad world, but it's kind of starting to wane off, especially now that they're really starting to get heavily into cheaper styles of models for their gauge. It's not really that good. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address to the best I can LC39A. Beyond that, though, I have to say Lionel is a classic name in model railroading. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. Also, Cody Fritz said, what's the price range on those? So the price range on an AC-44C6M from Scale Trains without sound installed is $189. With sound installed, and me personally, sound installed is just way easier in my opinion. You can custom mod your sounds, though, if you don't get the sound installed one. The sound installed ones are around 320 or 330. So
wow.
they get on up there when sound is installed. But without sound installed, they're pretty cheap. They're about $189, which is very cheap for the model railroad side of things. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to Samuel Franklin, and Samuel put in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, Samuel, for that support, and we do appreciate that. And he said, they know what we know, and Russia is using our satellite and other intelligence gathering sources to intimidate us, and Russia cannot even power project in a neighboring country with connected rail, and call their bluff on this stray drone.
Well, I thank you for the support, but you never really can take an armed threat as a joke, because 100,000 men, if supported initially, will be able to take the Suwalki Gap, even if they're having a hard time in Ukraine. Because the reason why they're having a hard time in Ukraine is because there's thousands of Ukrainians literally facing them down everywhere on the front. There are no NATO forces right now in any large number around the Suwalki Gap that would face them down. So that's what generally I would say is that this is still an imminent threat that's being posed at the Suwalki Gap at the moment, even if their battlefield performance in Ukraine is wildly poor. It's always better to be proactive than reactive in that kind of scenario, because what would be worse? Being proactive, and if they invade, we're able to stop them, or being reactive, and then they invade and they take the area because no one was there. I would say that the former would be a lot worse than the latter. And so with that, a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, it is time for us to move on into the next. Also see a lot of people saying, dang, hobbies are not cheap. No, they're not cheap at all. They're fairly expensive. Like, any hobby is insanely expensive. But anyways, with that, we are on.
You know the hobby that's not expensive? Working to the damn bone. That's why I work to the bone every day, because I'm not spending the money on hobbies like that. I'm not doing it. I got to put that into the S&P 500 or something like that. I got to plan for retirement. I can't be thinking about hobbies. I say.
But I will say this though, like on the defense of the expense. I mean, like when you look at these, they are pretty detailed. Like, they're so detailed they look in that picture like they're real. So it's not really like you're paying for something that's like subpar quality that's really expensive. I mean, this stuff, like Scale Trains is known in the model railroading community to make them photorealistic. Like, these people are so obsessed with the photorealism side of things. When you buy them in their box, it'll actually tell you the exact year that they modeled it off of. So if there were any modifications, like they changed the horn up top, or there was a new vent added to one of their like batteries, ducts or something like that, it was represented because it would be like the 2019 version of this specific locomotive number. So they're extremely detailed, like way over the top with the detail. So I guess it kind of makes sense that it would be fairly expensive, but still a lot of people do find an issue with that because it's so expensive, it's hard to get into and start it.
Also, by the way, Cody Fritz said, but what about motorcycles and guns? I don't shoot my guns because I don't want to spend money on the ammo. I'm a cheapskate. Also, I haven't bought a motorcycle because I don't want to spend money on the motorcycle payment. I also don't want to pay money for the insurance on the motorcycle. I also don't want to pay money for the gear either. I'm honestly, truly a cheapskate. Actually, like that's no joke. I've gotten to the point where I just can't bring myself to spend money on things like that. Like I just cannot do it because the economy is just a little bit on the shaky side, and I'd rather have the security mentally to know, okay, I haven't wasted my money on things that are not necessarily productive, and I would rather just work and save and do it that way. And also, I really enjoy what I do here on the channel and with work, so I would rather find more enjoyment doing this than simply buying things personally. So maybe one day the motorcycle, maybe, but I just can't bring myself to do it. Like just thinking about a payment, oh my God, I'm like, hell no, I don't want that, but yet I want the motorcycle. It's kind of like a push and pull type of thing.
Yeah, it's a tough thing. The economy is unstable, but those trains do be training. So I still find them interesting. And I also like to get on Facebook, just to be entirely honest. I get on Facebook and I just look through all the model railroading communities and hard stuff and put it in a collection. I'm like, wow, that's really neat. Maybe one day I'll be able to make a layout like that when I have the time and also the money, because those are not cheap to make. So with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. And we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, Cody, sound the same. Cheapskate investor. Good on you, by the way. I think, we may have a little bit of more of a boring existence, but I think we'll have a little bit more peace of mind, at least in my opinion. But anyways, jumping into our next super chat here, this one is going to go to none other than Gunfox. And Gunfox throws in two $20 supports. And thank you very much, good sir, for that support once again. Actually, three of them, actually. And he has the days in history for us. What happened on this day, or actually on several days, actually. He said August 21st, 1911. Good year, also good gun. He said the world's most famous painting, the Mona Lisa, was stolen from the Louvre, and the heist transformed Leonardo da Vinci's portrait into an icon of modern culture, and Nat Turner's rebellion in Southampton County, Virginia.
This is the guy that stole the Mona Lisa.
That bastard.
Look at him. That smug look. He looks dead in the eyes, honestly. Like bro, he looks dead. Well, let's see here. He had briefly worked as a glazer.
Oh, damn, he was Hot Dog Man. What the hell? Hot Dog Man? What's he doing out here doing these heists?
Man, technically it's a glazier, I believe, but glazer is better.
Okay.
But beyond that, though, they returned it, but that is still absolutely crazy. Where in the world... Dang, there is no picture of it. But I was about to say, where in the world is the picture of it missing from the wall in the Louvre? But beyond that, very interesting stuff. And so I got to say, a big thanks to you, Gunfox, for sharing that part of a day in history. And also, let's go pull up Nat Turner's Rebellion. Oh, this was the slave revolt that happened in 1831. Now I remember this. Oh, for some reason I was thinking of let's see, I think it was the Harper's Ferry raid, if I'm remembering correctly, from John Brown. But this was a totally different thing. This was actually a slave revolt that happened, and this actually sparked a lot of discussion about abolition. This was one of the big contention points at the time about abolition, is that it was unnatural for people to be slaves. That's why the slave revolt happened. And other people said that as a result of the slave revolt, these folks are dangerous. That's why they should be slaves. That generally was how the argument went at the time after the effect of the slave revolt, or specifically Nat Turner's rebellion. The rebellion did fail. Of course, many would know that because, nothing came as a result of it. But still, a pretty wild thing that happened nonetheless. And I do have to thank you so much for the support, Gunfox, and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible and keep it rolling. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our second one from Gunfox, he has some more facts for us. He said February 28th of 1990, the STS-36 was a NASA space shuttle mission during which the space shuttle Atlantis carried a classified payload for the DoD, possibly the Misty Recon satellite. And question from the chat.
Hey, and thank you so much once again for support, Gunfox. And there it is, STS-36, taking off at night. Absolutely sick. Look at it crawling on its way to the launch pad from the assembly hall. Sick. Really sick. I absolutely love this. Look at this picture that they took in front of the shuttle. This is one of the most 80s pictures you will ever see in your life. Actually, this is a 1990 picture, technically. But for some reason, it has a very 80s feel to it. This era feels like it was a million years ago at this point with how the pictures would turn out.
Yeah, ever since 2001, it was just totally different.
Yeah, totally different. But beyond that, I got to say, Big thanks to you so much for support and sharing that with us about STS-36 and sharing another brilliant day in history. And so, with that, we will make sure to get one from the chat before we move on to the next day in history. So what we got, Matthew?
All right. So the question from the chat in honor of Gunfox goes to Little by Little, who said, will the U.S. do a stealth strike on Russia and pretend it wasn't them as payback?
Oh, no, absolutely not. Like, they guarantee you that that will not happen. Because it would be pretty easy to tell that it would be us. Like, it's a stealth aircraft, but it would be pretty easy to tell that we were the ones who did it. So I would heavily doubt that we would ever do something like that. So with that, I hope that has addressed that live chat well, and we are on to the next day in history.
And our next day in history is going to go to Gunfox, of course, once again. And he says, on April the 24th, 1990, the STS-31 was the 35th mission of NASA's Space Shuttle program, the 10th flight of the Space Shuttle Discovery, and the primary purpose of the mission was the deployment of the Hubble Space Telescope.
Oh, that's really cool. Look at this. Look at this. Wow. Oh, actually, this is a really cool picture. Columbia was also in frame as well, preparing for a launch, while STS-31 was being conducted. That is really cool. 2 space shuttles.
Those astronauts really had that iron in them.
Man, I'm not going to lie. You were absolutely stuck on that. Like, you've been stuck on that all day, man.
Today, this is a modern launch pad. Tomorrow, it's a metropolis.
I'm not going to lie, folks. I was back here in the middle of work, and he busts into the office. Hey, dude, you've got to have that iron in you. I was like, I do not even know what he's talking about. I was like, I'm in the middle of trying to, like, work on putting all this together. He's like, bro, have you seen this thing? Have you seen this thing from this, like, Singaporean guy? And I was like, no, bro, I haven't. He's like, bro, well, let me get it for you. I got to show it to you. He came back and showed it to me, and I was like, yeah, that's pretty good. And I was like, okay, it'll probably be left there. I was like, it's just something that you thought was cool. He's been bringing it up like every 20 minutes.
Man, I'll tell you what, that guy, that Singaporean founding father, he spoke to me. I'll tell you what, he just spoke to me. I heard that hype reel, and I was like, honestly, like, really, honestly, I just got to make a hype reel. Like, that really, like, it had me going instantly. Like, I was looking for music. I was looking for footage. I was, like, ready to make a hype reel. I was like, damn, this thing's got me pumped. Like, the only problem is, though, I'm like, Singapore is not my country, so I can't get too pumped for Singapore. I was pumped for the edit, but I was like, I need to go make a U.S. version of that. Like, and then I saw a lot of people have already done that, but I want to create a unique one that we can show, like, during maybe the intro, like, maybe one night, or like an unusual night or something. We can show that. I want it to be something that people watching, you get goosebumps after you watch it.
Man, that's a very good inspiration. That's something nice to hear about. But beyond that, getting back to the Hubble Space Telescope.
The way you said that was like, you crazy idiot, be quiet, and then you moved on.
Man, I was like, I don't know where to go with it. I'm just like, man, that's a great
like,
inspiration.
Yeah, that's great for you. And be quiet. You back to this Hubble. It's like, damn.
But getting back to Gunfox's super chat, this is the launch of the Hubble Space Telescope. Pretty cool stuff. And look at these pictures. There's the Hubble. I remember when the Hubble used to be a big thing that he told us about in school, and then it burned up in the atmosphere a good while back at this point, like well over 10 years ago, I believe. But I always was like, wow, the Hubble, it's so cool, it's so neat. And then it just disappeared. It burned up in the atmosphere.
It's still out there. What? It burned up? I thought it was still out there.
No, the Hubble is gone. The Hubble is gone. It burned up in the atmosphere on re-entry. Let me see here. Yeah, here we are. Let's see, entered service. Wait a minute, decay dates 2030s? Bro, I'd heard that this thing burned up like 10 years ago.
News. I knew it was fake news. I knew it.
Hold up. Wait a minute. Hang on.
Gunfox, he got the facts wrong. Like, he got the super chat and he got all the facts wrong. I knew the Hubble was still around. But I still hear about it. That Bill Nye is still talking about it.
Bro, Bill Nye though,
he may be obnoxious and crap, but I don't even know really what his qualifications are, to be honest with you. But he used to be on a show.
Let's see. This guy looks like he would design this space telescope. He looks pretty chill, though. He looks like a nice guy to talk to.
Dude's living in the nether. I mean, do you see the window behind him? What the hell?
I think he's living in the Twilight Zone, technically, man. Like, he looks like he's in... Dude, it looks like he's on, like, his own little island in, like, the 6th dimension somewhere. Like, that's a wild thing. Let's see here. And then we got Hubble, which the telescope's named after. The pipe adds a lot of aura to the man. But let's see here. I swore, y'all, like, I feel like that's a Mandela effect thing. I remember hearing someone was like, rest in peace to the Hubble. And it was like 2012 or something like that when it happened. And I was like, oh,
man. Mandela effect?
Yeah, because I swore, dude, at some point I had heard that someone said that the Hubble had burned up in re-entry in the atmosphere in like 2012 or something.
Interesting.
That's why I said it with such surety. I was like, it's gone. Because I remember hearing about it, dude. I was devastated when I heard about it. I was like, oh my God. I was like, the Hubble was so cool. Because we were still in school, and I had literally just gone to a book fair like a couple of months before I heard that, where I got a book about space, and like two of the big things they had in the book was the Hubble Space Telescope and the ISS. So I was like, wow, the Hubble is so cool. And then like a couple of months later, I remember seeing somewhere on the internet, they were like, it's retired, it burned up in the atmosphere on reentry. I was like, no. I was like, damn it. And so I thought, like, anyways, moving on though.
By the way, just to clarify this, Gunfox thinks I was making a go at him. I wasn't making a go at you. I'm saying Andrew got it mixed up. You had your facts right in your super chats, by the way. Like you had all your facts right. Andrew was the one that got the Hubble thing wrong. I was like, the Hubble's still here, but he was saying that the Hubble had burned up. I'm like, no way, it's burned up. They're still talking about it. Like, and also by the way, I see people debating between Bill Nye and also Neil deGrasse Tyson. I'll be honest with you, Neil deGrasse Tyson, he likes to be right a lot, and also he likes to talk a lot. It's okay though. It may just be his personality. Also, I don't know why Bill Nye's cussing at people, like, or at least getting sort of vile with people. Was that video real that he made where he was like saying, he taught kids about science or something, but you're burning the damn planet up or something? And he went off.
Yeah, I think it is real. Actually,
yeah, I couldn't tell if it was like AI or if it was real. I'm like, what the hell is he cussing at me for? It's like it's his generation that led to the problem, not mine.
Man, he's getting into generational blame out here. Man, honestly though, it is true. I mean, like, it's like if anyone did anything,
well, I just got here.
Yeah, like we just showed up. Now we're at fault, bro. That's really that boomer type mindset. But beyond that, though, I'm just kidding. By the way, don't burn me in the stake, folks, for that one. I'm just kidding. Don't hurt me. Don't hurt me. I'm just a silly little guy. I'm just a silly little guy here. But beyond that, though, I would have to say, it appears that this thing is still out there. Actually, I just was Mandela affected into thinking that this thing had burned up in the atmosphere. But look at that picture that the Hubble took. That is gorgeous.
That is pretty nice right there. I like that.
Space is a really crazy looking place. That rhymes, but that is also true.
Yeah, that is true.
And so, pretty neat stuff. Also, now I'm seeing Melanie 164. You say, yeah, someone said it was gone and had burned up. You did. That's what I swore to have heard. Like, that's why I thought this thing was gone. Like actually, I'm happy to hear it's still around because I thought it was gone the whole time. That's why when I said it to man, it's like, oh, it's gone. Like, I said in like a sad way because it's like, it's gone. It's a huge piece of history, massive impact that it had, but it is gone. Apparently it's not. It's still around. I'm happy to hear that. Because I really loved this thing back when I was a kid. I thought it was the coolest thing because I looked at the pictures in the little space book I got, and they were like, the Hubble did all of this. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, he did all this? It's like, wow, this is so cool. Like, everything that it was like this one, I forgot what this one's called. Like, they have a name for it, but it shows all of these galaxies just hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands, if not millions of light years away from us, just out there in the middle of nowhere, just sitting out there in their own little world, each and every one of them. It was such a cool thing what it's done. It's cool to know that it's still out there doing it though. That's a great thing to hear. But still, a massive thanks to you so much once again for the support, Gunfox, and sharing that with us because I was a huge fan of the Hubble. And it's really cool. It's really cool to hear that STS-31 was the mission that deployed the Hubble. And so with that, a massive thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, it is time for us to move on into the next one.
All right, so moving into our next super chat here, this one goes to another channel legend. It is Duncan VR, and Duncan puts in a $24 donation, and thank you very much, Duncan, as well, for that support. He said, what is the marmot saying about Mr. Horseface? And break out the marmot.
Oh, we gotta break out that marmot. It's a classic segment. We can't go on an Enforcer show without it sometimes.
Break out the insanity.
Oh, hello there.
Oh, hello there, Governor. What's he saying about Mr. Horseface? He said, give him some apples. He's got to eat. Today he's going to have a nice hungry dinner. Give him some vodka and apples. That's what he needs. A little bit of that. And he also needs a little bit of plastic surgery, I think, because horsey, you can't just walk around like that. It's a crime. But tell us more.
Aw, man, I'm the professional glazer. Aw, man, I gotta be honest with you. I think that this whole Sergei Lavrov thing is kind of overblown. He looks like a horse. I look like a dog. It all evens out. Beyond that,
Oh man, you know, he lost another hundo, by the way.
oh, unfortunate for him. I guess he'll have to get an extra shift at the Shell gas station. But beyond that, I do have to
That's the
say,
difference between working for the viewers or working against the viewers. That's the difference. You lose subscribers if you insult your viewers constantly. You don't cater to what they want, and also you take them for granted. And I would say the hot dog man tends to fit that description to a T. Meanwhile, over here we actually listen to what people say and also try to tweak things a bit to make it better each and every time. So you know, I think it shows through the numbers. I think it shows.
Also, I like that one thing though, where he built his entire channel off of pretending like he actually cared for Ukraine, like that whole rigmarole. And then finally, he got to where he was tired of it or something. He tried to move on to another news topic, and everyone who had ever been there for Ukraine was like, well, "Can't we get some Ukraine news?" And he said, "To everyone interested in Ukraine, f off." And it's like, well, wow, way to tell your audience thank you for watching. Like that is a great way to keep people around. But you know that guy's got some bad issues. Like really bad issues.
Oh yeah,
That
for
guy
sure.
that guy's crazy. I mean, that guy's like legitimately crazy. Someone needs to put him in the pen. Somebody needs to put him in the sanatorium. Because one thing that always helps to clean out the mind is a sanatorium. It says it in the name, sanit. That means clean. So, with that, I hope that does address that well. I hope you enjoyed that Marmot and Fly segment there, Duncan VR. And a massive thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who have helped to make this channel possible and help us to keep this thing running. And so a massive thanks to you so much once again. And we're on to the next one.
Also, Carl Miles said Lavrov looks like Herman Munster from the Addams Family. Honestly, he really does. Like outside the horse reference, he kind of does like Herman Munster. Can you pull that character up, by the way, Jamie? Can we get a picture of Herman Munster and get a sort of a comparison going on here? Because I need people to see this here. Because for all the people that don't know who Herman is, they need to see exactly what we're talking about here. So we'll have a reference here on the screen in just a quick second. There he is, right there. Look at that, Herman Munster. Honestly, I think I will say this though. I think Lavrov looks closer to the horse than Herman Munster, but Herman Munster would be a close runner-up, I would say. But also, by the way, Lavrov, if y'all don't know, comes from, I believe, a pretty prominent family in Russia. I think that's why he got the position he's got, I believe, if I have the story correct. And because I've always wondered, like, why the hell did they pick Lavrov for that position? That seems like a very high-profile position to pick him, but I think that's why he got it, at least from what I know.
Dude, is that on the left? Is that Viktor Orban?
Careful.
Like,
Oh, okay. I was about to say, who are you about to say?
Is that Viktor Orban though? It looks like Viktor Orban.
Honestly, could be a little bit.
Bruh, that's Viktor Orban getting pissed off when the gas pipeline's been cut off again at the Druzhba pipeline, and that's Lavrov.
Man, I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. This picture of Herman Munster right here is memeable. Like, this is like, put the caption below it. What happens when your lubricants train explodes on the railway? I have a picture like that.
Bruh, this was Lavrov when he showed up in that CCP shirt in Anchorage, man. That was it.
Is that
Bruh.
Jim Carrey?
No, and apparently that's the guy. Like this is from 1964. I don't even think Jim Carrey was like old enough to be in a picture like that at this point.
I think he was. You're right. You're right. Kind of looks like Jim Carrey with that smile, though. It's kind of a little bit odd.
Yeah, he kind of did. He kind of did. That's actually a little bit unsettling looking. But let's see here. Any other interesting pictures we could get of him? That's Sergei Lavrov when they bring out the ketamine.
Honestly, like the forehead consistency is not the same. Like with Herman Munster, like some of these things, this forehead's like a ledge, and then some of them is like it's a cliff face. Like this one right here, like just straight up and down. Like I don't understand. They don't really have like a consistent look for this guy.
Dude, you know, actually at one point he was a funker in the German army. Apparently.
Oh, look at that.
Man, he was calling in those artillery orders. But beyond that, though, I'd have to say that generally, Sergei Lavrov, I think he looks more like a horse than he does Herman Munster. Like, it's kind of getting there, but I think he actually does look more like a horse, actually. Peskov, though, Dmitry Peskov, just to add in a bonus here, he really does look like a rat.
You know, I don't know, like what. Let me pull up real quick. I'm curious. Dmitry Peskov, what did he do to get in that position? I'm just curious. Let's do a quick looking here at Peskov. How did he get here? So let's see. Peskov was born in 1967. His father, okay, here we go. His father, Sergei, headed the Soviet diplomatic mission in Pakistan. Peskov graduated from the Institute of Asian and African Countries at the Moscow State University. He specialized in history and Eastern studies. Then the same year, he joined the Soviet Foreign Ministry. So he has a long-standing history with the USSR, it seems like. He was first appointed the Soviet embassy in Ankara, Turkey, as an assistant. Then he was the attaché. Then he was the third secretary at the embassy. Then he got assigned to work at the Russian Foreign Ministry. So basically, he just worked his way up the ranks. Kind of, it sounds like, honestly, what Putin did to a certain degree in a different bureau. So yeah, he was a statesman, or not really a statesman, but he was just sort of like a bureaucracy fella, and worked his way up to where he's at now. So now he gets to be the official liar in chief.
Also, man, the way this guy is like posed in this picture here and looking at the camera, I think that's the exact same way a rat looks at a piece of cheese on a rat trap before they go and try and take it off.
What was he trying to do here? Like, was he trying to like give off what was this for his like Tinder profile or something?
Right? He sat there and said, I'm somewhat of a liar myself. Like, it's legit.
Well, I can lie like the best of them.
I'm something of a bastard. Like, I don't know, but dude, like it's rough, man. Like, let me go see. Let me go get a comparison for y'all. Here he is, and then the common rat. Here we are. See, very similar.
I'm not gonna lie, the rat's cuter.
Yeah, the rat is cuter. The rat is cuter. Let me go pull this up off screen.
Not that. Just to clarify, not that Peskov is cute in the slides. I'm not saying that. But just to clarify that real quick, we said cuter. The rat is cute. Peskov's not. There we go. I fixed it.
Let's see here. I can't find any rats really quickly. Like any other kinds of rats, at least. Yeah, none of these are gonna work. Yeah, but he generally looks like a rat for the most part. He's the rat, Lavrov's horse face. Together combined, they make Animal Farm. So with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here, our next super chat is going to go to none other than Zyper Sniper 1, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Zyper, for that $20 support as well. We do appreciate that. He said, coffee fund for the enforcers. And so with this war heating up so much, we might see World War III before GTA 6. And disappointing. And question to the chat, please.
I think it was support Zyper Sniper, and yes, we're mostly going to see World War III before GTA 6. I know, very disappointing. However, on the plus side, they will hold back the development of GTA 6 for another 10 years to add a World War III DLC. So there is a bit of a silver lining to the wait. But beyond that,
it's coming next year, right? Like mid-year, May or something like that?
Well, that's what they're saying right now. That could be pushed back again. We don't really know. So hopefully it will be, because I think a lot of people have been waiting for that for a long time. But beyond that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, at least on that side of things. And I have to say, it is quite disappointing as my esophagus just collapsed there for just a second. And also, thank you for supporting this channel and supporting the Coffee Fund. And we will make sure to get a question from the live chat in your honor. So what do we got, Matthew? What do we got?
All right, and this one goes to Brian Gonzalez, and he said, once Leningrad is derussified, and Ukraine joins NATO, do we just need Belarus to complete the set?
I suppose. I guess so, Brian. I suppose.
Where's Leningrad?
Leningrad is the old name of St. Petersburg in communist times.
Interesting. The U.S. president made that same mistake the other day. He put out a True Social post and called it Leningrad, to the dismay of a lot of OSINT people. So yeah, I mean it's weird. Like honestly, I've never really called it Leningrad. Me personally, I can understand like some people that like may have lived through the area where it was like called Leningrad might call it that, but I've always just known it as St. Petersburg. So that's what I've always called it that.
Man, that's so damn goofy. The only real St. Petersburg's down here in Florida, down here near Tampa. Damn it. Yeah, I don't know what the hell you're talking about, St. Petersburg. That shit over there, damn Leningrad. But, well, man, shit. but beyond that, it is kind of interesting that there's a St. Petersburg in Florida. I think that we need to investigate that and figure out why that's the case. But the reason why it was renamed from St. Petersburg to Leningrad and then back to St. Petersburg is because when the communists took over, they wanted to remove any sort of czarist naming conventions. And St. Petersburg is named after Tsar Peter the Great. So they removed the name and then they called it Leningrad to completely remove the czarist influence or the bourgeois influence from Russia.
Oh, that's interesting. I had heard that from somewhere, but I didn't recall it.
Yeah, so then Volgograd, which was also a city, had nothing to do with the Tsar, but Stalin had the whole cult of personality thing going on. So when Stalin became the leader of the Soviet Union, he then renamed the city personally after himself to Stalingrad. And then after he died, a couple of years later, it was renamed back to Volgograd.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so, kind of interesting stuff. And then out here, Matthew, in the weirdest shithole that is Chelyabinsk, there is this place called Chelyabinsk Fort. You've ever heard of it?
No.
You never have heard of it, actually?
No. Also, by the way, hold on a second. Let me go back and fix something here. Brian, I think it auto-corrected on him. Brian meant to say Kaliningrad, he said. He said, once Kaliningrad is de-Russified and Ukraine joins NATO, do we need Belarus to complete the set?
Oh, yeah, I would say sure. I mean, why not? Let's go for them all. If we're going there. Go big or go home. That's what they say. But I hope that does address that well. And also, Matthew, I'm about to blow your mind. Notice, look at this. This is interesting. When I look over here, you see this? The city of Kishtim. Then I come over here. There's no city name. Why is that?
Because this right here is a city that they wanted to keep secret.
This is a closed city, and even in the modern day Russian Federation, nobody is allowed to enter the city rather than people who live in the city with a special government passport. This is a nuclear city. It develops nuclear technology for the Soviet Union and the Russian Federation, and you can actually see the giant perimeter fence that they have around it. This thing is more secured than most national borders, actually, with near like national border checkpoints set up for people to drive in and out. And only people who have a special passport are allowed into the city. And the passport is specifically issued only for this specific area. It has no name. It has no postal code. This city does not exist in any actual written form anywhere in Russia or the Soviet Union. It only exists in this small little area. And because it is in the 40th district, I think, of the Chelyabinsk Oblast, or the closest zip code to it, which is Kishtim, is something like 40, the Russian version of the zip code. This place is called Chelyabinsk 40.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's like their equivalent of Los Alamos, basically, but a little less open.
Kind of, but there's actually loads of these throughout Russia, like loads and loads of them. This is one of the most commonly known ones, is Chelyabinsk 40, but there are loads of close cities like this, and you can also see all of the different kinds of refineries, reactors, testing facilities, all of them highly guarded, if you notice. Every single one of them has their own security perimeter, but every single one of them is involved to some degree in nuclear technology.
Oh, that's interesting. That is very interesting, by the way.
Yeah.
So they compartmentalize their stuff just like we do at the highest levels of classification. They sort of keep it compartmentalized and separate.
To an extent, yeah, but the thing with ours though is like for Area 51, it's just a base. Like there's no real supporting facilities. This isn't just a base. This is a whole city.
Yeah. Honestly, we don't know a lot about Area 51, though. Like, we're not really sure exactly what's under the ground because there's a lot of underground infrastructure there that we're not able to see. So all we can see on the above ground portion, which can be seen from satellite view, is the hangars and also support buildings. But I would imagine there's a lot more underground.
Well, Matthew, the one can only dream. One can only dream. But you want to know something else? You want to know the most outside Chelyabinsk 40? The most famous closed city in history?
Sure.
Try and guess. Take a guess. One guess.
I would say maybe, I don't know. I don't even have a clue.
The city of Pripyat was a closed city.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was a closed city that was a part of the Chernobyl nuclear reactor power plant. But It really technically didn't even have the name Pripyat when the incident happened, from what I understand. It got the name, I think, because at one point in history there was a village around this area named Pripyat, and then after the fact they were like, it has to be Pripyat because it's where that village kind of was at some point in history. But this was also another closed city as well, and I wish we could show the security perimeter around this thing. All of that's long since decayed and largely disappeared and been overgrown, but it's a pretty interesting thing that this was also a closed city, and that's also why the Russians didn't want to admit that there was any kind of an accident that generally happened in this area, because they would have to admit that this was a closed city that was working on nuclear development, like a nuclear power plant.
Interesting. Also, by the way, since you're throwing around all these facts about these closed cities right here, I see some people bringing up Area 51. People love to talk about Area 51. It's like, I think at this point it's over talked about, to be honest. But a lot of people don't know this. Area 51 is not the only secret site out here. It's called Area 51 for a reason. The Tonopah Test Range is divided up into areas. Area 51 is a specific area within the Tonopah Test Range, and that's where they conduct some of the compartmentalized aircraft testing is out here at that area. A lot of private contractors work out of there, and they obviously are very secretive about it. You can't even get close around the perimeter anymore. You used to be able to go up to the mountain around it. I think it's like Tikaboo Peak or something like that. There's like some mountain over there that you could go up to, Bald Mountain or something. You used to be able to go up there, and I think you could legally see part of the base from there with a telescope. But you can't really do that anymore, or if you do, there's obviously massive surveillance towers that are around the entire perimeter, and also a bunch of electronic surveillance, so you can't really get close to it anymore. But you can't see anything. Like, there's nothing going on above ground typically here that's of note. And if they do an aircraft test, it's always at night. They don't ever do it during the day because, for obvious reasons, you don't want to be seen. So, yeah, now this is the 51st area of the Tonopah Test Range.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a very interesting place. And I've heard some people call it Groom Lake, because I think this dried up lake bed is called Groom Lake. But
It's technically called Homey Airport. That's what it's known as an official designation. But Groom Lake's a nickname for it. I think that's what they originally call it. And then Area 51 is the military designation for it.
wait, this thing is called Homey Lake?
No, Homey Airport.
Homey Airport.
Like homie, like what's up, homie?
Like legit, you're not joking.
Yeah, it's like legit Homey Airport.
Yo, what's up, homie? We testing out secret shit. Like, man, like, that is goofy. Like, that actually
I don't know why
sounds
they
pretty
call it
silly.
that, but that's the designation.
Dude, everyone at the base, like, they're like, hey, yo, what's up, homie? We making UFOs, right, Chief? Like, man, they do that stuff. Like, everything. Dab me up, blood. But anyways, this is
Also, by the way, one thing that's a misconception. Robert Krogan said they can use lethal force. Legally, they can, but here's the catch, though. They're not going to use lethal force. Like, the sign says that to deter people. They're not really using lethal force unless you're, like, obviously doing something horrible or committing a crime or something. If you cross across the thing, you're going to get stopped by the security contractors that are around the base, because they contract with private security to protect Area 51. You're going to get detained by that security, and then they're going to call the local sheriff out to come arrest you, and they're going to bring you back to the local county jail and hold you there for a bit. So you get a trespass thing. You get a trespass notice. Also, I think you get a ban and bar letter from the U.S. government. They get the what they call it, the JAGs on you for that one. So it's a whole process. Like, you get put through the ringer if you go out there and try to do something like that. So the moral of the story is, do not cross the boundary line there, because if you do it, yeah, you're going to end up in some serious trouble unless they're feeling generous and just let you off with a warning.
Man, I actually saw a body cam from the local county sheriff's office, sheriff's department, where some guy had actually penetrated the perimeter of Area 51 and just started driving through the desert towards the base. And so they got out there, and they were on Area 51's, restricted area, these sheriffs were, and they were like, dude, what are you doing out here? And he was like, man, Super 8 Actual told me to come here. I'm getting a job. And,
Yeah, I saw that one.
and dude, the sheriffs were like, okay, did this guy like give you like a phone number? No, he told me to meet him here. Super 8 Actual. He's giving me a job today. He said he could use my talents. What kind of talents do you have? Secret. It's classified.
The nanobots.
Yeah,
He said, "I'm here to
nanobots or
develop
something
a
like
nanobot."
that. Yeah, and so then the green dude, what do they call them, man? The green guys, the green dudes, like the leader of the green dudes, something like that. But they all came out.
The camo dudes.
Yeah, the camo dudes. So then the camo dudes all show up, which are federal, contracted federal security. They all show up, and then they're like, "So what did this guy tell you? He told me that he was here to get a job. This is not the normal way that someone gets a job. Like they were like saying that, like they're like nobody gets a job like that. And so it was the most funny thing. So they trespassed the guy, and they were like, "You're like, we're gonna have to get this thing towed. We're gonna have to call a tow truck up here to come tow it." It was a whole deal.
He was so crazy, man. They just sent him on his way. They didn't even really like detain him or arrest him or anything. They just sent him on his way. I think they just said, just get out of here. Don't come back. They told the guy, don't come back here. It's like, yeah, I'm not coming back. It's like, geez, man. Honestly, can you imagine the amount of crazy people that the contractors deal with out there?
Endless.
That place is endless. Like that literally nonstop. And also they have to get cargo trucks, like semi trucks into that base to bring in supplies. Obviously they got to like feed people on the base because there's people eating lunch there and things like that. They got to have resources. So they will have semi trucks come into the place, and also they fly some of their stuff in too. But they've got to get semi trucks through the gate, and they have these tourists out there that are literally hanging out, and the trucks can't go through the gate until the tourists leave. So I mean, it's just a nightmare. Like when it comes to like actually entering and exiting this place, I've heard it's a nightmare because they can't go through when anybody's watching, and they got to be real like secretive, fast with it, and not let anybody see how they get in and out. Because if the risk is if somebody leaves the base and a tourist is out there and they're like, oh, look, there goes somebody like leaving the base. They might tail that vehicle and tail it all the way to its destination, leaving the base, which is an OPSEC violation. So they can't have people tailing the trucks, and they got to try to stop that. So they usually don't let them leave.
Man, I'll be honest with you, man. It's just I'll be completely straight up with you all. If anything extremely classified was happening at Area 51, it has probably moved on well before we're talking about it right now, decades ago. Because the fact that this thing is so publicly known, it is a huge OPSEC it's an OPSEC risk in itself to do anything around here because there's probably some whack job just sitting out there somewhere waiting for something to happen. So I would bet you that there's probably more happening at this point at Redstone Arsenal here in Alabama, or Picatinny Arsenal up in New Jersey, or all of the other military installations and bases where research and development is done than there is happening at Area 51 at this point, just to be entirely honest on my 2 cents.
I would imagine they're still testing stuff out here because this is a perfect location. Like it's still like, even though there's a lot of tourists that go out here to it, it's still surrounded on pretty much all corners by mountains. So you have a natural visual barrier. People cannot see into the base unless they hike up a really, really tall mountain. And even at that, they can only see so much because it's so far away. And also there's the heat distortion aspect too, because if you use a telescope, it is so hot out here usually that the heat distortion messes up the vision of the telescope. So you can't even see to the actual runway itself. So that's another problem. But you can still test stuff out here generally with pretty much covert abilities. To my knowledge, you still can because nobody can get close enough to it. At night, the stuff's practically invisible once you take off. And, you know, I think it's still pretty usable. And they still fly people in here every day from Las Vegas. They still have the flights going out here every single day. So it's definitely still active, like without a doubt.
Yeah, that's true. You know, like we do know that they tested the SR-71 and the U-2 and all that. That's been publicly said that was all tested at Area 51. I would bet you though, Matthew, that when they test anything, they most likely air traffic control wise put these things on a rapid ascent pattern. You know, when they take off at night, so that way nobody ever has the ability to try and hear them. You know, and be like, oh, something's happening. You know, like try and look up in the sky, maybe with something in night vision, possibly. So I bet
They probably, I would assume if I was out there and I was operating the place, I assume what they would probably do is you'd probably send up decoy aircraft like normal jets, like F-16s or something like that, most likely F-16s. Send up a couple of F-16s to cover the sound of whatever aircraft's being tested, because obviously they have a lot of interceptors here, like sitting right there on the runways you saw. They regularly fly around the base. If you're doing a test and you have a secret aircraft flying up, fly the F-16s out. It distracts people. The sound also overwhelms whatever aircraft's flying out that they're testing, and it gives a natural cover to it because everybody's going to be distracted by the F-16s. They're going to be, oh, look, it's the jets. Meanwhile, the other aircraft's flying out there and it's getting up to altitude and you can't see it.
Yeah, I'll probably think so. That's probably a good point. I also like how they just stack stuff out here like it's like Bubba Joe's auto wreckers. Like they just have crap sitting around out here. Like honestly, I think as far as the structure, I can promise you, Matthew, with the amount of like structure and organization going on here, this has to have been overseen by civilian contractors, because you know someone in the military sort this shit right, have it all, you know, like it would be perfect. This looks more like a civilian kind of a thing for the most part.
I would assume they've got like the private contractors, you know, like for example, like the major five defense contractors. That this is where they test stuff, so they probably have those people out there working on it, and they're kind of sloppy a little bit.
But you know they have to have people out here long term because they have a baseball field.
I never noticed the baseball field, actually.
Yeah,
That's
well,
a crappy looking baseball field.
yeah, it's pretty busted looking, but to keep grass in that kind of environment, that's actually got to be pretty resource intensive. But they have to have people long term. So my question is, these can't be barracks like for people to stay in. These are too small, and also they're incredibly low to the ground from the shadow they're casting. So I'm guessing those are like storage units for
I think
stuff.
they're covered garages.
I think they have to be something like that because, but then at the same time though, they have loads of vehicles to just sit out in the wide open all day. So why in the world would they have covered garages for some and then just keep loads of other vehicles sitting out in the wide open?
I don't know, but some of the people that work here on this base, I think it's the support staff mainly. Some of them live in the nearby town called Rachel. If you ever from the few videos I've seen about Rachel, apparently they're very. It's not a closed town. Like you can go there. Like there's nothing preventing you from going there. But the people there are very secretive. They're also very strange acting because I think most of them work at the base. Because who the hell would live out in the middle of nowhere in Nevada? At Rachel, it's like I don't think many people are going to choose to do that unless you work here or something. So they act a little bit odd. Like I've seen many people go there and it's like very like kind of spooky, like with the way the people act.
Yeah, I bet you a lot of them just get harassed by whack jobs
Oh
and they're
yeah.
getting tired of it too. So that's probably also why they're acting tired and worn out and weird. But you can tell that there's been some expansions recently because this looks fairly new. And also this hangar looks fairly new. This one actually is big enough, at least in terms of wingspan, that you could slide a B-2 bomber right inside. So I'm guessing, I bet you, Matthew, if they put the B-21 Raider anywhere, it probably would have been in there. If they've ever tested it at Area 51, it probably would have been in this hangar.
Yeah, they've actually had an OPSEC violation out here before. They had an aircraft that I can't remember which one it was. It was some like aircraft, I think a drone or something. They had it sitting out on the runway and it got caught by the satellite. I think they had it removed off the satellite images or something, but you could see it if you go back and look it up. They had one out here and it got caught. They were trying to move like a portable cover over it or something, but it got caught before they moved the cover over it.
Let's see. What would I type in to find that?
I'll see. Type in Area 51 aircraft spotted or something like that. It might pull it up.
Aircraft spotted.
It's just pulling up a bunch of pictures of the Janet flights out there from Las Vegas. It's not really pulling up the satellite picture. Oh, wait a minute. There it is. I see it right there.
Look at this goof. Oh my God, it's super secret. That is a Saab J35. I don't know why it's at Area 51, but that is, I promise you, money. Not that one. The Saab. We need to find that one. Oh my God, it is. Look, it's super secret. Dude, I thought this thing was cool. Like, I think this thing is like really neat. But I
really like it.
That is a J35, 100%. Like that is nothing special. So that's the one.
Also, yeah, that's it. The Warzone has it. That's the one I'm talking about.
I'm not gonna lie. Whatever that thing is, it doesn't really look like that crazy,
I think it might be a drone of some sort.
Yeah. What the hell? What the hell? What is that? What in the world?
That's ugly right there. I would hide that just because it's so ugly. I wouldn't let anybody see it.
So people are like, how the hell did you know that? Like about the J35? Oh, I just know. Like I just like don't ask. I just know. But I'm just kidding with you. By the way, it's fine that you ask. I just happen to like aircraft and military technology, so I researched it all. Generally, you can throw a vehicle in front of me. I'll be able to tell you with a decent amount of accuracy what it is off the bat immediately. But that was a Saab J35. And they were like, oh my God, look. It's a mystery aircraft. It's like, it's not that mysterious. It's like, that's why it's in the wide open.
What's not mysterious about Area 51 is the burn pits out there. That's not mysterious. That's actually quite unfortunate. There were some people a while ago that used to work there that were like speaking to Congress. They were speaking about being exposed to like some chemicals. I can't remember for certain. I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I think they were burning like the stealth coating of like some of the aircraft that they were doing out there or something. And obviously it releases toxic chemicals. So I think they were claiming that it caused health issues or something with them. I'm not sure if they ever got any justice from it because I think the government said, we don't even acknowledge the fact that base exists. So we're not giving you any type of compensation for any type of exposure to deadly chemicals. Like you're not getting it. So I'm not really sure how that ended.
Dang, that's kind of messed up if they didn't get any compensation. And it's also like they haven't denied its existence. I mean, the government has said, yeah, it's a thing. What about it? And like, what the hell? But anyways, I wish we could. Well, that's certainly not a representation of whatever that was.
Nah.
Nah, I'll bet you it's probably one of those little stealth drones, like an RQ-160 or something like that.
Yeah, I think the other drones we have, like I can't remember. I think it might be the Reaper was tested out there too. I think we've tested a lot of drones at Area 51 over the years, so it's probably testing drones again.
Let me see if I can go find. It's the RQ-170, actually, everyone. Sorry. It's this one, the RQ-170 Sentinel. This is probably something close to what was being seen on that satellite, or something at least comparable to it, because we have been trying to develop a load of these sorts of stealth drones that can conduct reconnaissance without getting shot down immediately, and this would be one of them. So I would bet you that it was something more along those lines. But to be honest with y'all, folks, I don't buy into the whole hooky kooky UFO thing. It's just that creating proprietary technology for war is something that you have to be incredibly secretive about. Otherwise, everyone's going to rip it off immediately. So it's most likely just stuff like advanced drones, advanced reconnaissance aircraft. I mean, anything that we know publicly that's come out of Area 51, generally most of it's actually involved in reconnaissance, like the U-2 or the SR-71 or any of the stealth drones that have come out of this area. It's mostly involved in reconnaissance. So I would expect that that's probably what this facility is still working on primarily. So one of its main functions is the development of stealth reconnaissance drones or any other kind of reconnaissance aircraft.
But keep the UFO theories going though, because it actually helps with OPSEC. If people don't know it, the government actually pushed UFO theories like themselves. Like the intelligence agencies in America pushed that theory and tried to make it mainstream in the public. Because here's why it helps: if you have enough people, people that are a little bit, on the conspiracy theory side of things, and they say, "Oh, look, I saw something," and then you have thousands of people start saying the same thing about, "Oh, look, I saw something out there," or something. And then you have that 1 out of 1,000 person that actually may have saw the classified aircraft. Now you have 1,001 people saying they saw something, and nobody knows which one was the real one. So everybody writes them all off as kooks. But that one person that actually saw it might have actually seen it, but you'll never know though, because they got caught up in the flurry of crazy people that said they saw a UFO. So that's why they push the UFO thing. That's why they also go through all the trouble and rigmarole of making people believe, oh, top secret, like aliens out there at Area 51. It basically is part of the OPSEC mission, basically.
Man, actually, so a lot of people are bringing up, hey, that thing that was seen on the satellite probably was an F-47, or the
That could have been.
NGAD. May have been, actually, because it would kind of line up in terms of the era that the picture was taken during. So yeah, it could have been, actually. I mean, at least we don't really know a lot of what this thing looks like. This is the only official picture, and even still, it was a 3D rendering. It wasn't even a real picture, but it does kind of look similar, at least in its forward-facing profile. So may have actually been. But with that,
Oh, and also Brian Gonzalez said not very good for government transparency. Now, here's the thing: I believe in 100% government transparency, but also here's the same thing as well. Some people don't know like to keep things quiet for their own good. Like for example, if some American citizen happened to like take a picture of a stealth aircraft or some new aircraft that was being developed, the odds are that person's going to leak it or share it or something. They may not have bad intentions, but not knowing the full ramifications of what they're doing, they might blow the entire OPSEC on the thing, and they might share it around. Now, all the billions of dollars that went into that project has been blown to the wayside because of that one maybe unintentional incident that person did caused all that money to go down the drain and also caused us to lose an edge. So on that front, I believe in compartmentalizing that information. I think that's a solid thing. We have to do that. And I fully believe in keeping that kind of stuff secret. Now, hopefully in the budget side of things, we could hear a little bit more about that. That would be good for transparency. But when it comes to the aircraft, like we really can't be transparent about that because some people don't have any good sense when it comes to sharing stuff like that.
In matters of national security, when it comes to national defense, there is no room for transparency. None of our enemies are transparent with their military capabilities. It would make absolutely no sense for us to put ourselves at a disadvantage in a possible war because we want to tell citizens, like just to put it this way, citizens that we are not going to be bombing for some reason are going to know all the information about what our aircraft can do to bomb people with, which only serves to benefit our enemy with that information. Like, what in the world would a citizen do with the knowledge that we have a new fighter jet an F-47 that is capable of operating a drone swarm of other fighter aircraft like it. What do they do with that information? Nothing.
They sell it to the newspapers.
Well, they could do that, but what in the world do the Chinese and the Russians do with that kind of information? Well, they can do a great deal with it, and for that purpose, that's why you can't be transparent in matters of national defense like that. That would just cause a whole myriad of issues and no benefit for anyone. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, because I'm all for government transparency, but when it comes to matters of national defense, folks have got to understand there's a lot of stuff that has to be kept secret and a lot of stuff that will be secret because it's in the best interest of the nation that is kept top secret or top secret on a need-to-know basis, which is the highest classification level out there in the country. And so with that...
Actually, it's not. For secret black projects, there's a higher level that's not official. It's called SAP, or Special Access Programs. That's typically what the classified aircraft projects fall under. And it's a special version of classification that's compartmentalized. So they have like one person working on one thing, but the next person may not know what the next person is working on. It's that compartmentalized.
Oh, that's actually pretty interesting. I didn't know that. I was told by folks in the military the highest level, I guess that's the official level, top secret on a need-to-know basis. And then top
Special
secret...
access programs are only a small group of people, and you have to be read into it, so they wouldn't know.
Huh, that's pretty interesting, actually. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Howard Mendelson, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Howard, for that $20 support as well. He said, yeah, right, 2 weeks.
Well, we'll have to see, Howard Mendelson. You know, we've heard that for months now, so hopefully this 2 weeks is really 2 weeks instead of, 5 years. So with that, a big thanks to you once again. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Flash1, who puts in a 20 as well. And thank you very much, Flash, as well, for that support. He said, hello, Enforcers, and always great to be here. And a little bit for either coffee, pizza, or something of your choice. LSA and live chat question, please.
And thank you so much for a little something of our choice, Flash1. And we will make sure to get a live chat question. So, Matthew, what do we got?
And that live chat question goes to Knox Date, who said, would Belarus really follow Russia into a war against NATO? And seems like each time they try to get yourselves involved, they always back out.
I would say that with Ukraine, they've not really been that apt to get involved, but if there was a war with NATO, it might as well be all or nothing. The only reason the Belarusian government is surviving is because they're kind of propped up by the Russians. So at that point, it would also be a fight for their common survival as well if Russia was to lose. So at that point, it's an all or nothing fight for them as well. So I would say yes. So with that, I hope that has addressed it the best I can. A big thanks to you once again for sponsoring the live chat and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Nathan Ringerwall. And thank you very much, Nathan, as well, for that 20. He said, I also think it's worth pointing out that the loss of tanker cars will cause further logistical problems beyond the loss of fuel itself. And they're not just losing the fuel, but the capacity to transport the fuels in the future. And
I thank you for the support, Nathan Ringerwall. But there is a small caveat to that. There are more tank cars most times in most railroads than needed. Usually there's always a capacity volume of something around one full tank car for every two, because as far as it works, if you take a fully laden fuel train from point A to point B, what is that fuel company loading up their fuel into if there's no tank cars there? So there has to always be one tank car in transit laden with goods and then a second tank car empty to be able to be pushed into the siding or the spur that loads up the fuel for that company to continue to load up fuel while the train's away. So while it's making it a little bit more difficult, they can make new tank cars. Tank cars, really any rail car for that matter, isn't that difficult to make and generally can be fabricated in an engine shop or a car shop pretty quickly for the most part. And also considering that the materials are fairly basic and nothing's extremely advanced on most of those cars, it wouldn't take too much effort. So the impact of losing the fuel is really the big thing. The tank cars are somewhat minor and more so of a small impact and can be replaced in a quick amount of time, most likely within weeks or a month. And so with that, we are on to the next one. But a big thanks to you once again for the support.
Indeed. And our next one here goes to Grim Hades yet again. And he puts in a 20, and he's hit LSA 50 times in a row. Hey! And he said, take one from the chat.
And we will, Grim Hades. And a big thanks for the unbelievably massive support again tonight and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, Matthew, what we got for a live chat?
So the live chat goes to Obu, who said, didn't Lithuania already stop train traffic to Kaliningrad?
I believe that they stopped military train traffic to Kaliningrad, but they did not stop other train traffic to Kaliningrad, if I'm not mistaken, based on what I was reading on the treaty earlier. But I might be wrong, so take it with a grain of salt. But with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. A big thanks to you once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to 6'9", Mr. Nikolai, who puts in a 15, and thank you very much as well. Excuse me, goodness, voice crack. They said, speak of lubricants. Oh, yeah, are we? He said, LSA in Australia is a company called Australian Lubrication Specialist.
Huh.
What do they do?
Um,
Careful pulling that up.
I don't know. I'm not pulling it up. I'm not pulling it up. But a big thanks to you for the support. Double the shout and keep it running. That's very interesting to hear that that's what the LSA stands for in Australia. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so moving on to our next one here. This one is going to go to none other than Wild West Rosie, who puts in the 10, by the way. And thank you very much, Wild West Rosie, for the support. They said, what are the chances of all those Russian soldiers being diverted to the northern border of Ukraine from Belarus?
Let's see. Let's see. What are the chances of all those? Very low. It would take a lot of effort to relocate them quickly, so I would say that the chances of that are slim to none. Also considering that they have already publicly broadcast, they are going to be a part of the Zapad 2025 exercises, it's slim to none. But a big thanks to you for the support. I hope that does answer that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 10 from Ukraine 1996. And thank you very much as well. They said, thank you guys for the great job you do. And I'm glad you see things for what they really are.
And I thank you, Ukraine 1996, for really appreciating this channel and helping it to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Crispy. And Crispy puts in a 10. And he said, you guys rock.
Hey, and thank you for the support, Crispy. And thank you for the kind words. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to Ryan Mornin, who puts in a 10. He said, Slava LLT LSA.
Hey, and long live the Lee Spring Army. And a big thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
And a big shout out to Bradley Barrows and Crispy once again for that $10 support without comments. But we appreciate you, Bradley and Crispy, yet again. And we do appreciate that support. We also have a 10 from Foxglow, who said, when I saw the airspace closed over Eastern Europe, I couldn't help but think of the Optimus Prime quote, and so began the war.
I thank you for the support, Foxglow. Unfortunately, growing up, I never saw a lot of the Transformers, so the quote doesn't hit. But still, I do thank you massively for support, Foxglow. And I would have to say, it generally does look fairly concerning to me. But a massive thanks to you once again, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to El Cuva, who puts in a 10. And El Cuva said, I appreciate the call out.
No problem at all, El Cuva. I thank you for the support and really appreciating the call out. And so a massive thanks to you once again, and we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to WS, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, WS, as well. And they said, Enforcer Matt, a pizza and coffee fund, and also USA Hype Reel Fund, and let's go. And also, I'm glad to see you behind the Hype Reel Fund, by the way, or the Hype Reel, that is, because I'm actually going to probably make that in my free time, when I get some free time. But he said, also, God bless the USA and all of humanity in these unnerving times. And also, what the hell? Iran, you need water. Why beg for water and war in the same breath? What idiots.
They are idiots. But I do thank you for the support, WS. And I gotta say, the hype reel should be interesting. I hope it goes hard. There are actually a couple of things, improvement-wise, that may be coming around on the channel here in the future. I'm not going to tell you all what I'm going to be doing. Matthew was able to hear about it. That is one of those special access project sort of things, because I got to see if it's actually practicable to do. But we'll actually be working on something fairly neat for all of y'all to have access to some new resource that'll be made here on the channel that will be very interesting to take a look at. So with that,
you know what's above special access programs?
What's above that?
The deep state, and I'm the deep state, so I get to know all of that stuff.
The damn deep state, turning a freaking. But beyond that, I got to thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, WS. And big thanks to you for the support and making this channel possible. We are on to the next one.
And the next one also goes to Crispy yet again, who puts in a 10. And thank you, Crispy, for the third support of the night. Hey! And he said, to the coffee fund.
And to the coffee fund indeed, Crispy. And a massive thanks to you once again. And we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to It's Court, who puts in a 10, excuse me. And thank you very much, It's Court. They said, it's time to stop trying to talk to Russia with words, especially with today's developments. But the question is, will the USA finally see this? And I'm very doubtful. And it's time to go into aggressive negotiations in LOC.
And I would agree. I would entirely agree on that. And it's hopefully a long time coming when it happens. So a big thanks to you once again. Hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 10 from Silent Killer. And they said, fun fact, if you try and take a picture with your phone of a Reaper or other class of drones, the drones can blur your photo.
I actually didn't hear about that before. That's actually news to me, and a big thanks to you for sharing that. Not that I ever go around taking pictures of Reapers, but when I do, I'll expect it to be blurry. And so a massive thanks to you.
Is that because, Silent Killer, is that because they blast a phone with IR or what? Not IR, but LiDAR. I think if you blast LiDAR to a phone camera, it like makes it mess up and screw up. I think some people point like their phone cameras at some of those car LiDAR systems, like for self-driving vehicles, and it actually causes distortions in the camera. Believe it or not, at least from what I've seen. But I'm not really sure how they would do that in practice, though. How you could blur a photo on a phone other than doing that.
That's pretty interesting. I wouldn't really know myself, but that's still very interesting to hear, and I got to thank you for the support. Help this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to NK Production, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, NK, as well, for that support. They said, hello, friends. Kim here. And would you guys ever do a show with other YouTubers on the Ukraine topic? And I would absolutely love to see that. And Kim loves you guys and LOC. Hey. And let me say this real quick before the Enforcer says anything. Let me say this. And there's obviously some cool YouTubers out there. Like Denny's Davidoff was a cool one. Preston Stewart's a pretty cool one as well. He's also following us on Twitter these days. I saw yesterday. So there are some cool YouTubers out there. Now, there are some YouTubers we will never absolutely work with ever, like that we have a problem with. We're not going to get into that. We don't want to start a beef here. But there's some that we will not work with because they've been sort of nasty to us in the past. Longtime channel legends will know that. We're not trying to reopen those wounds or anything like that. So we're not getting back into it. The only one we talk about still is Hot Dog Man, but we even use a pseudonym for him just to keep the drama on the low end. But Enforcer, what say you?
I thank you for the support. And there are some great YouTubers out there. Unfortunately, we never really gotten to know Preston Stewart a great deal. He does follow us on Twitter though, and we really appreciate that because we respect his work. And apparently he respects ours, so the feeling's mutual on that. And I think he does good work. Dennis is pretty cool too. He actually drops in and watches the show from time to time, so he's pretty neat. And Civdiv, just to give a shout out there, he's pretty cool as well. He actually put a comment below one of our short war videos a while ago saying that this was the best war news channel out there on the internet. So we're really highly, honored that he has that kind of praise for this channel. But as far as some others, we will never work with them. Like Matthew pretty much said it. One of those, well, no, I'm not going to say that. Some of them have been incredibly nasty with us, and we really want to have absolutely nothing to do with them going forward. But beyond that, though, Preston Stewart, Dennis, folks like Civdiv, they're incredibly cool. We have nothing but respect for them. They work incredibly well in their own analysis and news coverage. And maybe one day we will be able to do something like that. It's just that generally, it's really hard to kind of make that content because maybe at some point when like we make a special documentary video, because we still are kind of floating around that idea about how to actually make it work, because every time we've tried it, it hasn't really worked. Maybe we could have like a special guest in the video for a brief moment, like for example, Preston Stewart or Dennis or someone. But as far as doing it on a live stream, generally from what we've tried out in the past over the years, it just doesn't really work out on our live stream format, because our live stream format is pretty much just belting out info and analysis and really works incredibly well in between Matthew and me. But whenever a guest is implemented, it's really hard to try and fit them into that kind of a design of a show, just in general for anyone. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And a big thanks to you once again for enjoying this channel, NK Production, and helping it to keep on running. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army. And also, folks, I have to say really quickly, right now we have about 40 more super chats to go from what I'm seeing. And so I'm going to be speeding it up a little bit so that way we're not extremely overtime tonight. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Zodraz, who put in a 10. And thank you very much, Zodraz, as well, for that $10 support. We do appreciate that. We also have a 5 from Robert Krogan. He said, with the attack on American company and drone in Poland, does NATO take this as poking the bear, and does the U.S. increase support tenfold?
That is yet to be seen, but we're not really thinking that at the moment because the responses have been incredibly mild. But a huge thanks to you once again, and we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Jake Robinson, who puts in a 5. He said, hello from Canada.
Hey, and a big hello to Canada, and a big thanks for the support. And we are on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from Peter Florence, who said, LSA, y'all. And we also have a $5 support from Troy Wolfenbarger, who said, it's getting hot.
And a big thanks to y'all for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Heart of Samson, who puts in the 5. He said, I see you're trying to get me to re-enlist, LOL, and Semper Fi.
Hey, and Semper Fi, and a big thanks to you for the support. And of course, we're always trying to get people to re-enlist. Join the army, young man, or the Marines in your particular instance. See the world, or at least a barracks, like in different parts of the world, and maybe a bar here and there. But a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And of course, I always love to know that people are proud of our intro and that it makes them feel patriotic. I love to hear that. And so a massive thanks to you once again, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Daniel McMurray, who puts in a 5. And Daniel said, I love the coverage, and Russia should be in trouble for today's attack.
I would agree, but whether they will be or not, it's yet to be seen yet. But a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have 3 $5 support from Jake Robinson. He said, for your sugar, LSA. Here's for your cream, LSA. And also, don't forget the stir sticks, he said on his third donation. And thank you very much, Jake, for putting together the whole coffee package. Believe it or not, I actually don't use cream, sugar, or stir sticks. I drink the cold brew straight up, or I drink the Black Rifle coffee out of the can. But I will put that towards the Black Rifle Coffee Fund, because the Black Rifle coffee is good, but they got it priced pretty good too. I try to drink the cold brew more than the other one because it costs more. But thank you very much, Jake. And Enforcer, what say you?
I got to thank you massively for support, Jake, and helping us to have the entire accommodation of coffee. I drink my nitro cold brew straight up. No reason for cream, sugar, or stirring sticks. It's straight coffee. It tastes like garbage, but it keeps me going until 4 in the morning. Oh, but still, a massive thanks to you once again. Hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Annoyed AF, who puts in the 5. They said, what are your thoughts on the 40% staff cuts of the ODNI by a particular politician, as well as the cuts in January on cybersecurity monitoring?
I would have to say that cybersecurity and other sorts of assets like that are incredibly important to national security, and I believe that the attempts to try and cut down on these governmental departments in the guise of trying to decrease government spending may actually be opening us to increase government spending due to the kind of damage that foreign adversaries could cause the United States. So with that, I hope that does address that well. A big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from Axum Outdoor Adventures. And he said, Putin knows his only option is to sacrifice present-day Russia and hope to be remembered as a patriot and a martyr to future generations. And basically, that's his only way out.
Possibly, maybe. But a big thanks to you once again for support, and thank you for throwing in your analysis. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, a big shout out to Sajari Bloodfang, who put in a 5, and thank you very much for that support. We also have a 5 from Espen Turzenhagen, and thank you, Espen, as well for that support. We also have a 5 from Local Haunts, who said U.S. General says NATO can take Kaliningrad with lightning speed, and maybe they're worried.
They might be, but generally we would only take Kaliningrad at lightning speed if they attacked us first. So if any if any Russian forces, sorry, it's not the Soviet Union anymore. If any Russian forces were building up in Kaliningrad, then they most likely would be building up there for a possible offensive first or a defensive because they know they're going to be attacking us soon. So a big thanks to you once again for support. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Bob Anan, who throws in a 15 Australian, and thank you, Bob, as well for that support. He said, why do you think nations in Russia's sphere of influence, such as Belarus, follow the domestic abuse playbook, economic coercion, physical abuse, gaslighting, and if Russia can't have you, then nobody can?
In short, it's just how it works culturally within that area. Any Russified kind of a culture kind of works on that metric and has since the Mongol invasion of the 13th and 14th centuries. And so a big thanks to you once again for support and help this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that quite well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Luke UK, who puts in a 5. And he said, I love the Enforcer channel, and it's fantastic work as always, and LSA.
And thank you so much, Luke UK, for enjoying this channel and helping it to keep on running, because you are making this channel possible. Long live the Lee Spring Army. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from Burnaby Alex, who said, the old saying is, countries don't have friends, they have interests.
And I'd agree with you, Burnaby Alex. That's incredibly true. Countries don't have friends, they have interests. And people have got to understand, there's no friendships. So a massive thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have another 5 from Espen Turgeon-Hagen, and thank you very much, Espen, again for that second support. We also have a 5 from Destiny Edgington, who said Flamingo, and indeed, pink flamingo all the way, all day long. One day we'll find out why the Ukrainians called it a flamingo. I've heard theories, but we don't know for certain. But thank you very much, Destiny, as well, for that support. We also have a 5 from Chicken Pizza, who said, if Russia collapses, should Kazakhstan, Georgia, and Azerbaijan grab land to cut Russia out of the Sea of Azov and Black Sea for national security?
I'm generally not one for territorial violations, even against enemy states. So I generally say no. We ought to try and maintain the borders as they are right now. If any countries break out of Russia and become an independent country from what Russia is currently, that's fine. But other countries trying to take over land for those sorts of reasons, not really a necessarily big fan of it. But a big thanks to you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a $5 support from Torsten Hock. And he said, as one of the newest citizens to this country, I have one question. Why is half the world to come to the U.S. if it's such a horrible country?
That's a good question, because it isn't. A lot of people like to say it's horrible, but that's because they haven't been anywhere. Most Americans actually never travel out of the United States in their entire life, so they actually don't know what it's like in most other countries to have an idea. Like I personally did go, Matthew and me did at a time, to the United Kingdom. And it was a wonderful, beautiful country, a great place, but there actually are some differences inherent in the United Kingdom that you will notice, even with it being a great and wonderful place, and qualitatively better in America in some ways, that makes you go, I was born in America, it's the way I know it here, it seems better to me, and I like it here. No disrespect to the British, though, absolutely love Britain, and our family historically is actually from Britain. Like, DNA-wise, Matthew and me are both 90% British. About as British as you can get.
That part, though, about not being able to speak freely without getting locked up, that's a deal breaker for me.
You know, it's interesting because a lot of people actually don't know that, and this is something that I think a lot of people don't understand in America. Britain has no First Amendment, and they don't have a constitution technically either. When they talk about the English or British Constitution, they're talking about this loose set of somewhat more important laws than the others that kind of outline how things work, but there's no actual codified protected rights in the United Kingdom. Everything is subjected to being given or taken by the parliament. When you see when in Britain, for now, like example, right now there are certain things that you can say in Britain that actually can get you put in jail. Technically, that's entirely fine in the United Kingdom because they do not have a First Amendment codified protection of your freedom of speech. And so people in America find an affront to that. People in Britain, at least from a legal perspective, that is what it is. That's actually the law. That's how it works over there.
Oh. No, they find it to be in the front too. Like the majority of people do not like getting locked up for speaking their mind. They don't like that at all. Trust me. That's why we left the United Kingdom way back in the day. Was we were not happy with that, so we founded America.
Well, I think we were more so unhappy with the taxes. Like I don't really.
Well, we were unhappy with everything. You didn't have any freedoms in Britain. Basically, they were taxing the hell out of people. You basically were subject to corruption and all kinds of terrible things like that. So we left.
But I do see some people saying, let's see facts. You know what's interesting is that a lot of people have described Britain this way. It's an elected dictatorship. And technically it is, because there's absolutely nothing that the parliament cannot do. If people vote in if people vote members of parliament into the parliament, technically the parliament can do whatever it wants. There's nothing in their loosely amalgamated constitution that actually stops them from doing anything. So if people wanted to say vote in a fascist or communist government in the United Kingdom, they could. And they could democratically vote themselves into an extremist form of government, and there really isn't any way to stop that. It just happens. It's a little bit bizarre with that sort of thing. Technically, in America, it works kind of like that, but at the same time, though, there are things like the Bill of Rights in the United States, and also the balance of powers, or the separation of powers in the U.S. government, that generally would make an implementation of a full-on fascist or communist government next to impossible to actually conduct in theory. In the United Kingdom, however, it actually could happen because the parliament is the power. Recently they created a Supreme Court, or a higher court like a Supreme Court in the UK, but technically the parliament still has overriding authority over that court because the parliament is the power of the land. Well, technically the sovereign is the power of the land, but the sovereign invests their power into the parliament by technicality, and it's been that way since, I believe, the Glorious Revolution of 1660. Or wait a minute, I think that would have been the Orange Revolution of 1660. I'm not entirely sure. Y'all can correct me.
The Orange Revolution, it's the biggest revolution.
It's the greatest revolution. But beyond that, that's generally how it works in the UK. Very weird with that. I love the United Kingdom, to be entirely honest with you all. British culture is very interesting to me. Their architecture, their landscape, the people, I love it all. But the one thing that I do find very odd about their country is that it is a democratic system, but it really does show how protoplasmic it was and how protoplasmic it still is, because it's really in a technical sense the oldest functioning democratic type of government that exists in the world today, generally unaltered. So with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Ukraine 1996, who said, would Ukraine use the Flamingo on Moscow and LSA?
Who's to say? Like they possibly could in the
Next
future.
time on Moscow.
You invited me to Moscow. I send Flamingo as my deputy representative.
Have you seen those stupid memes? Like, I can't stand the Russian propaganda tries so hard to humanize Putin. Like the propaganda reels that comes out on Putin after he left that Alaska meeting was so cringy. Like they put these like filters on him, like he's like some Japanese anime girl or something like that. Like doing the little tee-hee thing and stuff like that. Like he said, what the caption was like something goofy like this. It was like when your friend's shy but wants to ask their buddy out for like a good time or something like that.
Oh my God.
And it had Putin saying, maybe next time in Moscow. It was like, are we seriously like humanizing this murderer? It's like, this dude's a murderer. It's like, he's not like some like just like cute little kid or something out there that's like asking his buddy out for a playtime or something. This dude's a murderer. It's like, and that's what the Russian propaganda consists of, is trying to show the Russian people or convince them that he's somehow like this likable guy, but he's really not. The dude's a straight up criminal. Dude,
imagine if the Nazi government in Germany was in power today. They would put a kawaii filter on Hitler. I promise you. like they would do it.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Terrible guy.
Yeah. Terrible. That is so stupid, though. I never heard of that until right now, and I'm honestly disgusted, but that's also hilarious and also seems very sus, I'm not going to lie. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Kyle Padell, who puts in a 5. And Kyle said, a look at Rock Island Caboose, Choctaw, Oklahoma.
Rock Island Caboose in Choctaw, Oklahoma. Choctaw, Oklahoma. Rock Island Caboose. Oh! It's a Rock Island caboose, and it's wood with steel bracings. This is old in terms of a caboose. These are like USRA era, but this is real. Look at that. Look at that. The inside's still like largely intact and untouched. That is sick. That's really cool, actually. I thank you for sharing that. And the Rock Island is gone but never forgotten. The Rock Island is sick. Really cool railroad. But a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from Levi Stratton, who said, thanks for keeping it real. And thank you, Levi, for helping us to keep it real with that support and also being a longtime channel viewer as well. We appreciate you. We also have a $3 support from Plazoth and Robert Krogan. And thank you, Plazoth and Robert, for that support. We also have a 2 from Cameron, who said, thank you, guys. And thank you, Cameron, as well, for helping to keep the channel running. And we also have a 2 from Gilliman X, who said, any new drone tech coming along the lines?
Oh, absolutely. There's always new drone tech coming around the pipe these days. And a big thanks to you once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 2 from LSA Sergeant Figment, and he said, LSA, hit that like button. That's an order.
Hit it, folks. That is an order. That's an order. Hit it. But still, a massive thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope that does address that incredibly well. And we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Bradley Burdett, who puts in a 2, and thank you, Bradley, as well, for that support. We also have a 2 from Bruce Lee, and thank you, Bruce, as well, for helping to support the channel and keep it running as well. And we also have a 2 from Peyton Burke, who said, what are your thoughts on the Venezuela tensions?
I think the Venezuelan government is an illegitimate government. I believe that Maduro needs to be deposed by the United States through any means necessary. So with that, I hope that does address.
They got a $50 million contract on him, to bring him into custody. That is for the United States. I think they got $50 million award right now.
Yeah, they do, and I think that's an appropriate award. Honestly, though, I think that we ought to. I feel like we should be generous to the troops. We ought to send the military down there and see which soldier is going to cash in on that $50 million bounty.
I think they sent ships down there, if you hadn't heard that.
Yeah, I think they sent the USS America, I believe it is, task force down there. But it's not to go to war with them. It's actually to deal with the cartels, but not Venezuela.
Well, they say that Maduro is a cartel figure. That's what they're accusing him of.
Really?
Yeah, if you'll pull up the $50 million contract or the $50 million like arrest thing or what, I don't know what they call it. It's like a reward for capturing him or something. You'll see on the actual release that it shows that he's part of a cartel on there.
Oh yeah, look at that. Narcotics rewards program wanted.
Click on his thing right there, and let's see if it shows it.
He looks like a slob in that picture. Anyways, he's 6'3".
Big dude.
Yeah, big dude. That's why he's eating that empanada out of the desk. Let's
Cartel
see.
of the Suns. That's what it is. Venezuelan drug trafficking organization. That's what it is.
Let's see here. Yeah. So, You know, folks, I think we ought to send down the whole of the armed forces down there to see who will be the lucky enlisted man who will capture this man. Alive or dead, largely, and we'll cash in on the $50 million bounty. I think he's wanted alive, though. I don't think this is like a dead or alive kind of.
It's an arrest warrant. Yeah, they don't do like dead or alive like at all. Like this is arrest bounty, I guess you could say.
Yeah, so hopefully someone will be able to get their hands on him, restrain him, apprehend him, and then cash in on that bounty. I think that should be given out to the wonderful folks of the armed forces to see who will get him. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address what I think about the Venezuelan government. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Burnham B. Alex, who puts in a 2. He said, no war for Diddy oil.
No Diddy, but a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 2 from the Playmaker 1271 who said, forget Area 51, look up Mount Hayes.
Mount Hayes? Is that just another name for Paris Island? Let's go take a look.
They're talking about Antarctica. Is this Antarctica or Alaska?
This is in Alaska. What about Mount Hayes? What about it? There's like nothing around.
You don't know about it?
No, I don't. Well, what about it?
I don't know.
Well, why do you go, like I should? Like, you went, I was like, what? I was like, it's a beautiful looking mountain, though. What about Mount Hayes? Let's go pull it up over here. Let's see here. So it's beautiful, but it doesn't really look like there's anything super secret happening around it. So I do thank you for the support and sharing that with us. I do have to say, though, a beautiful mountain. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here is going to go to none other than Nate, and he puts in a 2. He said, thanks for the facts and the banter.
And of course we are into cheeky banter. Oh, heavens. Great heavens. But a big thanks to you for the support, Nate, and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 2 from Cody Fritz, and Cody said, have a 2. Check out the Lake Van on a map. Looks.
And I thank you for the support, Cody Fritz. And I wish we would know where the Lake Van was supposed to be. Unfortunately, I do not know at the moment. But a massive thanks to you once again. I hope that this is incredibly well. I'm about to end up speaking like Churchill, man. I'm about to go, and that is what we are trying to do. You know, like he did in that one speech. But anyways, a big thanks to you.
That's what happens when you're slammered on brandy. You say, you talk like that.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have to address the parliament and say that we are in a state of war. And that is what we are going to try, though.
But anyways,
he may be a drunk man, but he still talks more sense than a modern politician.
Sometimes I am so blasted and blitzed, much like Hitler's bombings of Britain, that I have to have the voice actor of Winnie the Pooh do my speeches.
But honestly, though, Winston Churchill was goated. He was blasted the whole entire war, and somehow he still ended up running Britain somewhat okay. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, we have a $20 support from David Croton. And thank you, David, as well, for that $20 support. He said, thanks, guys. And once again, and great show.
And thank you for enjoying David Croton, because we are always happy to do a great show. So a massive thanks to you so much once again for support and the kind words and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, folks, we are on to the last Super Chat of the night. And that's actually serving as our Super Chat cutoff, so we can get on into some live chats and round this feller on out for the night. So, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so this one is going to go to Unpacked Executable. And he said, Mount Hayes allegedly contains an underground UFO UAP base. Yeah, big allegedly on that one. Big allegedly on that. You know, now the one thing that is interesting though, if y'all pull it up, there is CIA documentation which relates to Mount Hayes, but I'm not sure who authored it. I'm not sure who put that out there or anything like that, but it is in the CIA's database for whatever reason. But I'm not really sure what it's about. But Enforcer, what say you?
They have a lot of crazy stuff in the CIA database. Like, they have, like, the craziest shit. Like, and some of it's not even real. Like, dude, the CIA actually has a file that says Hitler really did make it to Argentina and escaped. And every single historical fact proves he did not go to Argentina and escape, or Antarctica. Like, they have files on that, and he sure as hell died in Berlin. Like, there is a guarantee he died in Berlin. No way he made it out. But they have files going, he made it to Antarctica, or maybe he made it to Argentina. It's like, no. Like, hardly anyone made it to Argentina. Like, at the end of the war, but he was guaranteed there at the end of the war. Nobody made it out. Nobody did, hardly. Like, except for a few. But anyways.
One of the things back in the day when the CIA was messing around with remote viewing and all that junk, all that silly crap, it was actually related to that. One of the remote viewers claimed that they saw something in Mount Hayes or something like that, and said that they saw some aliens or something like that up there. They made some like sketches of it, but obviously it's bogus. It's pure bogus. But they still have the documents out there. That's what it's about.
Man, honestly, man, if y'all ever read any of the unclassified CIA stuff, most of it is just absolutely harebrained. Like, someone was tripping on acid or snorting coke to come up with half the stuff they wrote. Like, none of like a lot of it's just absolutely crazy. It's not even found in reality, but it just gets the conspiracy nuts going. Like, it gets them wild. Like it's like that neuron activation meme, like where they show like it's like the little. I wish I could describe the meme. I'm having a hard time remembering it. Anyways, it gets the conspiracy nuts drive wild that the CIA would even write anything like that. Look, the deep state, the lizard people, it's real. And it's like, no, it's not. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to get on into the Morse code decoders of the night and then 3 live chat questions. So what do we got, Matthew? What do we got?
So for our Morse code decoders tonight, we have Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Mason Miami, Joni Dog, Norm Pritchett, Arabo Garbo, Her Royal Fluffiness, Kush, and Copioteryx. And you know what you have to decode the Morse properly every night? You have to have that iron in you.
Oh,
and they said Morse code for Morse says for tonight. Belarus is wanting to prepare for war while Russia strikes a U.S. factory. Be ready, LLT-LSA.
And that's the sound of money. And when y'all get that on the nail, that's the jackpot of the night. I get to congratulate y'all greatly for helping this channel to keep on getting the Morse code message out to everyone. The Lee Springer and Signal Corps continue to get that Morse code message correct time and time again. And there is no way in hell that no one can claim that the Lee Springer and Signal Corps is the best at what they do. So a massive thanks to all of y'all so much once again for getting that correct. And with that, folks, it is time for us to move on into the live chat questions of the night. That is right, everyone. If you, I will not put out a fake phone number because that might actually be a real one and people start calling it up. But with that in mind, folks, we are going to be grabbing 3 live chat questions for the night. We are currently overtime on our show at 3 hours and 50 minutes. And so we want to make sure to be able to get through those 3 questions to roll an ad break and round this thing on out like it's some kind of Hollywood TV show. And so with that, Matthew, what do we got for the 3rd to last question of the night?
And that one goes to Jezza, who said, could Belarus take one more of the Baltic states?
Just one more.
Just one? Can I have just a morsel?
Oh, I'm on a cheat diet. I'll have Lithuania. But anyways, I don't think so. The Belarusians would get curb stomped by a single Baltic state going on their own because their military is pretty much an armed police force is the best way to explain it. So with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
All right, so this one right here goes to Lewis Greenwood, who said, "So what's the real odds of World War III here?" He said, "We hear this all the time. Is it time to finally prepare?"
Oh, I was hoping someone wouldn't ask that question tonight because we were talking about it before the stream, and we're like, it sounds alarmist. We don't want to say.
Don't tell them. Don't tell them the truth.
I'm going to just be transparent with you all. We both were generally agreeing right now with how things are going is about 40%. That's what we're saying. Don't take us and quote us on that, but it's getting on up there. Things are getting a little bit more concerning every day. It's getting closer to it, but we don't want to say that because, we didn't want to say that on air. And since it's really late and there's only 6.6 thousand people here, which is still a small army,
Only.
I guess. Yeah, only 6. It's only half the country that's here. But that's what we're kind of thinking at this point. We don't want to sound incredibly alarmist. We want to make it clear the kind of imminent threats that are posed. But we also don't want to be like the nuclear bombers are flying and everyone's going to die. That kind of a YouTube channel. But it's kind of getting on up there at this point to us. We always told y'all that if World War was going to start happening, the percentage would start to pretty much exponentially climb from next to nothing, 3% on up towards 50, 60%. It's getting there. So I hope that
Do
addresses that.
you agree with my 40% prediction?
Well, yeah, I mean, we were in agreement before the show. You're like, I'm thinking it's 40%. I was like, yeah, it's getting on up there. Like, this is really concerning. So yeah, I was agreeing with it before the show.
Also, by the way, Melanie said 40% of what? What was the question? And once again, folks, don't quote us on this. This is based on purely our speculation, based on what we've seen over the course of 4+ years. This is based on that. The tensions right now are as high as they've ever been. Like, there's objectively, they are higher than they've ever been. There's no question about that. It's not really up for debate. It is literally just by so many different things breaking out at once between Russia, the United States, Ukraine, and also with all the new Axis powers in the world, which is Iran, China, North Korea, etc. It's literally, it's to a point now where it's like something is going to either break or somebody's going to give in. That's where we've gotten now. So that's why I say 40% is the odds of it right now. I don't say 50-50 because we haven't really seen this whole thing play out yet between Russia and the U.S. officials. Until that gets played out, then it might go to 50-50. But until we see where that's going, it's kind of hard to say. But, you know, even at 50-50, it's a toss-up. It's like it could happen, it may not happen. It's like right in the middle. So the odds are certainly going up. I'll say that. Like, I'm not sure if there's a time in history, other than maybe the Cuban Missile Crisis, that tensions have been this high. I'm not really sure how people really felt during the Cuban Missile Crisis because I wasn't alive then. So I've only been alive during this, and I can only go off what people have said in history from the Cuban Missile Crisis. But we're certainly at some interesting times, very interesting times, which could turn hot in the future, unfortunately.
I would have to generally say so, because I believe the last time I put out a number, I said it's kind of around 30%. With everything going on around the Suwalki Gap, it's going up to 40 at this point. Because if anything would ever happen, it's going to be at the Suwalki Gap. So any military activity around there, it's counted quite highly by me. And also the fact that the Chinese continue their low-level coercion efforts at greater efforts against the Taiwanese. That's also leading it to a very marginal degree for now to rise as well. So once again, take it with a grain of salt. That's just our pie in the sky sort of a statement. Nothing really to work off of. It's just a hunch or a feeling. But I would say roughly 40%. But with that, I hope that does address that the best we can, since we're both largely in agreement about that, and we're in agreement about that before the show. But with that, it is time for us to get on to the final question of the night. So who is the lucky last question? Who was the lucky last person to put in the lucky last question of the night?
All right, so this one is going to go to Big Sky. And Big Sky says, what weapons are likely to be supplied to Ukraine from the USA if Ukraine mounts an offense? Now, Big Sky, we're going to find that out in 2 weeks. Okay, we're going to find out in 2 weeks. Maybe. I don't know when we're actually going to find out. But the catch is, though, Putin's going to force the USA into a corner. That's what's coming. The USA might try to stall it out a little bit longer, but that's about all we can do. There's a chance maybe it goes back to maybe Putin starts talking fairly or tries to attempt talking fairly. But the odds of that are very, very slim, I would say at this point. I think the USA might end up giving some of our better weapons to Ukraine if it comes down to it, because at some point the U.S. officials are going to realize we're going to be fighting and dying, fighting against Russia, what U.S. citizens are, or we can give Ukraine more advanced weapons, take the risk, and let them try to deal with it first and try to wear the Russians down that way, and then we can fight a very, very weakened Russia after that. I think that's the calculus that's coming up. But Enforcer, what do you say?
I would have to say that could you reread the question really quickly?
Yeah, it said what weapons are likely to be supplied to Ukraine if an offense is mounted?
Really, generally, some of the most important weapons for an offensive would be airstrike capabilities. So probably more. Really, it would honestly not be more like vehicles. It would be more ordnance. So more air-to-ground ordnance, GBUs, JASSMs. You would most likely see a greater deal of high explosive shells being given to the Ukrainians in the hundreds of thousands for free for their artillery to fire, because artillery support is one of the most important kinds of support for an offensive. And you would possibly see more armored support being provided in terms of main battle tanks that are being retired from the Marine Corps, because the Marine Corps has retired all of their Abrams and has for a while now, and all of those are sitting in dry storage out in the desert. So we could gather all of those up. Those are like M1A1 FEPs and stuff. Send those off to Ukraine. And they could also use those as well for offenses, because in terms of offensive, tanks, artillery, and air support to support the infantry with are the three most important kinds of support for offensive capabilities. So with that, I hope that does address that the best we can. And with that, we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank you all so much for watching. It's been a massively long stream tonight, nearly 4 hours long, and I got to thank every single one of y'all for watching. We had 135,000 people here over the course of the entire stream tonight, and a peak viewership of 15.5 thousand people. We are entirely honored and appreciative to know that so many people continue to watch this channel and choose it to be their primary source of news, to the point that we are generally one of the largest live streams in America every single day. We are entirely honored to know that you'll spend so much hours and time watching this channel every day, and I hope that our news reporting and quality was up to scale and up to your quality that y'all all anticipate each and every night once again. And so with that, we will be seeing you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news from around the world. And if there is a short war video to be made, I will be the one making that short war video. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Least Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, thank you all for joining us yet again tonight. We will see you all tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern on our next nightly War News stream. And the Enforcer will be joining you all tomorrow for tomorrow's short war video. I have a strong idea we'll probably be having one tomorrow. So be sure to join the Enforcer for that. And in the meantime, thank you all for joining us once again, and all 135,000 plus people that were here by the end of the stream. And with that, Slava Ukraine, Heroam Slava, get some rest, and good night.
Spring on the shore.